Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. That is Jay, and I am Cole. And yeah, we said we wanted to be able to we figured we could squeeze in an episode before Christmas. We're a little shuffled around here, and as you can see, I'm not in my usual apartment. I'm in Sydney. My bedroom, but if you've watched the show enough, you've seen me do episodes from here before. Luckily, the internet has gotten better here now. It used to be kind of weak, and I'd worry about like cutting out and stuff. But last year, it seems to have gotten a lot better, which is cool. And I will say, wasn't originally our intention to do an episode about a Christmas movie. This is our third Christmas on the show because we started the show in late 2017, I guess, and it's not like we'd never wanted to, it just never really came up. And this was sort of almost a spur of the moment type thing. It just seemed like a great sort of opportunity when this came along, which is also like why, like, once again, we're doing a French movie after we said we were going to after we did an entire series of French films. We figured, it'll probably be a while before we do another French movie just because. But again, this is just a sort of a good opportunity when I read that this movie had showed up on Shudder. So this, of course, is known as Francis Can's Code Père Noël, and also in some English titles, as we got there, maybe most commonly known as Deadly Games, Dial Code Santa Claus. And I've even seen on Wikipedia it says Game Over, and there's one where they use Hide and Freak, which is, I guess, really going for the exploitation type thing. I never heard of that. But it was a movie I actually saw quite a few years ago, maybe about 15 years ago. One of my university friends who is really into movies and one of the people that, got me into like more off the wall type stuff. He had come into possession of a bootleg DVD of this because I don't think there was any sort of proper North American DVD release back then. I don't even know if there is now. And we watched it just before probably going our separate ways on Christmas break. So yeah, this would have been like 2003 or something like that. It was a long time ago. And it's kind of mind-blowing when you find out about it, to find like there's a movie that's about a kid who fights off an intruder at his house on Christmas Eve, and he uses like traps and stuff, and that this came out a year before Home Alone. And it's crazy.
It can't be a coincidence, man. It can't be.
Yeah. It says like that it was written and directed by a filmmaker named Rene Manzor, and apparently like when Home Alone came out, he briefly considered taking legal action against the makers of Home Alone, but then I guess he just sort of figured not to. I guess he just decided not to go through with it. I don't know what happened there, if he got an actual response or what, but there was a point where he was thinking about doing it, where he said they basically remade his movie, which is kind of true. Like Home Alone is kind of like a reimagining of this movie. And in a way, they did it in a much more commercially appealing way, because the main difference between these movies is tone, whereas Home Alone is like a wacky Christmas comedy coming of age. This is a very dark and played completely straight coming of age movie, Christmas, even though it has sort of a ridiculous premise. Made even more ridiculous by the fact that the intruder is somebody dressed as Santa Claus, and the whole time the kid is fighting him off, he thinks it's the real Santa Claus. We talked about coming of age movies before, and how dealing with kids and stuff, and how a big part of it, of course, of coming of age is the loss of innocence. But very few movies hit that on the head as directly as this movie. Because can there be more of a loss of innocence for a kid that still believes in Santa Claus, waiting up to see Santa Claus, immediately seeing Santa Claus kill his dog and then come after him and his grandfather? So, yes, this is a French movie from the late 80s. Our main kid is basically a product of those times. He's a kid obsessed with the action movies of the day. As we get in our opening shots, he's all into movies like, none are directly referenced, but it's obvious that he's into most of the stuff like Rambo and Commando and things of the. And while the kid might be a bit of an exaggeration, I will say, I've talked about it a few times, that Ryan and I had a friend growing up who was 2 years older than us, who we loved and adored, despite the fact that he was kind of cruel to us at times. He seemed to like playing mind games with us when he wasn't just beating us up, but also like he was this kind of kid. Like that's how I knew about all those movies before I got to see them. Like RoboCop, the James Bond movies, Terminator, Rambo, all this stuff was in in his blood. Like in Predator, he loved all that stuff, and he would tell his own interpretations of those movies to us before we actually saw them. And he loved the whole 80s action hero, and he had a very unhealthy fixation on weapons and the military and stuff. I think he grew up to be a normal dude, but and in some ways maybe too normal, because he had a crazy, amazing imagination in a way. But anyway, so I knew a kid like this somewhat. This kid is a little bit dialed up, plus the fact that all of his whims are basically achievable because he's so rich, and I guess they just it's never really explained like what his father did, but it seemed like his father was the one that encouraged this side of him or something, because his father seemed to love all that stuff too and love toys, because there's a whole thing about like this like hidden part in it's even bigger house than the McAllister's house. It's a vast castle-like mansion that has whole sections that it seems that have been forgotten, that only the kid knows about. And there's this part where it's this vast room full of toys that he said used to belong to his father. So it seems like his father seemed to be some sort of, I don't know, young at heart type person, or a person that loved toys. And they never really explain what happened to him or why he's out of the picture. I don't even know if he's supposed to be dead or what.
Like he's dead, yeah.
Yeah, I guess he's dead. And maybe he came from money too, but it's clear the mother is wealthy on her own. She's like the manager of a very well-known large department store, and she's clearly some sort of venture capitalist on top of that, because she talks about like buying stocks and stuff. So they are extremely wealthy. A huge castle-like house with like a caretaker's house on the grounds with caretakers look after it. So yeah, these are like the mega rich of Paris, this family.
Yeah. If you thought Kevin McAllister was rich.
Yeah, exactly.
This kid's got like the dream house, like the Silver Spoon's kid style house. Like it's, not only does he have all the cool toys, video games, pinball machines, he has like secret tunnels that go through the house. I mean, it's
like the 80s version of a smart home too, right? It's all rigged up with like cameras and stuff, and he's got like a wrist thing. Of course, this being the 80s, a big bulky wrist thing that he manages to make interface with it, so he can like control the cameras from his wrist and see things.
And computers,
computers with like the latest like software,
and the apparently he sends his friend a fax at some point.
Yeah, he sends his friend a fax. His friend seems to have like a fairly normal house by comparison, but he still has his own fax machine in his house. You wonder if that was like a present from the kid. Like he gave him a fax machine just so they could like talk to each other. Like that's what I thought, because it seemed like the other kids seemed to have a fairly normal home from what we saw. He wasn't super rich or anything like that. I give that kid credit too, because at first it doesn't seem like he's that good of a friend. Turns out he's a really good friend who will answer that in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve and get out on his bike and go out to try to help him. So he actually is a pretty good friend. When at first, he's teasing him for still believing in Santa Claus because they're at that age. And that's really what the movie hinges on. It's about the loss of innocence, like we say, and a big part of the loss of innocence for a lot of kids, myself especially, was the revelation that there was no Santa Claus. This actually led to the breakdown of my religious faith. That was when I stopped believing in God, because I was already sort of skeptical about God. But once the Santa thing came, it was like the last domino. I was like, okay, nothing holds us up anymore. Like because I thought, okay, Santa exists, so that's something. He's a supernatural being that can break the laws of nature. So that seems to be some sort of proof that there might be a God. When that came down, the rest just sort of fell like a house of cards for me. I was like, oh, okay, no miracles, no magic, no nothing. It was really tough on me. Even though, like, for maybe the last 2 years, I kind of knew anyway, but I just didn't want to believe it wasn't true, type thing. I'm a little embarrassed about it because most people you talk to, they like to point out that they weren't naive children, and that they knew when they were like 7 or they were 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like maybe I knew and didn't want to believe it. I don't know, but I know I believed longer than most kids do. And when it finally, like I said, there was no doubt anymore, it really did some damage. I don't know. That's the other thing. If I ever had kids, I have no idea what I would tell them about Santa. I just don't know what the right thing to do is. But that's the other thing.
Yeah.
The fact that his home had cameras just made me think, like, why didn't I ever ask my parents, like, why we couldn't get Santa on camera? Why we couldn't leave a camera for him?
Yeah.
Because
that was always my plan, was to sleep next to the chimney, and they never would let me.
Because like even if they said like because there's probably parents that say Santa being magic, he would just like show up as a blur on the camera. Still, I would love to see
Yeah,
the gifts just spontaneously arrive, right, and show up. Like something has to happen there. I'm sure my parents, if I did that, had some sort of deft deflection for that. And most parents will just point out, and that's what the damage his mother does in this movie. And really, what makes him believe it even more is the fact that she says, if you try to like spy on Santa and he finds out, he gets mad and turns into an ogre. And this is literally what pretty much he thinks happens. And at the very end of the movie, after all the carnage and stuff has happened, reunites with his mother. He says, "It's my fault, Mom." He believed
right.
it's his
So
fault
sad,
that he
man.
brought it on himself by wanting to see Santa. So, holy vey.
So use that money to buy some good therapy because
Yeah, he's going to be in it for
that
years
kid
and
is
years.
screwed up.
You want to talk about a kid having like an incident that screws them up or PTSD? Can you imagine anything more shattering?
Yeah.
Ah.
Well, he does a good job. Like he's like looks like he's in shock there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Or taking good direction, whatever it is.
Yeah. And it's funny because you watch Home Alone and you think, oh, look at Kevin. He's a pretty resourceful fella. He's got nothing on this kid. Like part of the montage in this, we were talking about. So this movie being an 80s movie, of course, has montages. And, the big montage in Home Alone, of course, is when he overhears the plan that they're going to hit his house at 9 or whatever. And then you've got him running home and the bells chiming and stuff. Da, 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 and he brings out the big map and the plan. And you see him setting. And you're thinking, well, this is pretty badass. It's got nothing on the montage in this movie. And it's not just because of like the traps he lays. It's because of the emotional resonance it has.
Yeah.
Because it's a much different sort of music being played. It's actually a song by Bonnie Tyler, which was written for the movie because it seems to be about how Christmas shatters our innocence or something. Bonnie Tyler, by the way, if people can't remember the name, she's the one that did like Total Eclipse of the Heart. That's Bonnie Tyler. Yeah. So that's her. That's what's played during that, and also over the end credits of the movie. And you're like, "Wow, this fits the movie really well." Well, because apparently it was written for the movie. But yeah, so that's playing. So you have him because the first thing this Santa intruder does is get attacked by the dog and kill the dog. So the first thing he sees is his dog get murdered by Santa. But what's good about this? So part of the montage besides the planning is one, it's kind of like something like Predator because he's actually already been slashed. Santa has already slashed his leg, so he's had to take care of the wound himself, and then he finds his dog and buries him. And there's even like some flashes of him remembering him, which is great in a way. I was saying before the show, I'm always annoyed like when they kill animals in movies, they don't really show the emotional impact a lot of the time. Like this kid, like it keeps him going. And even when he announces that he's coming after him, it's like, killed my dog. Like, yeah, of course he cares because any kid would. They wouldn't just move on from it like people often do in movies where they're just like, okay, we now have to worry about ourselves. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it. That would be my whole point if I saw him kill my dog. Is like, yeah, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's just a really powerful montage.
Yeah, one of many, but that one's powerful because he's like injured and has to, he puts a splint on his leg.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he broke his leg or something.
I mean, it reminds you of it's funny because like when you talk about another like Home Alone and comparing it to another Christmas movie, there's been many times articles written stuff about comparing that to Die Hard, right? But there's a lot of similarities between Home Alone and Die Hard. Home Alone is almost called like the kid version of Die Hard in some ways. This like bridges like between them so well, and it came out in between them. Die Hard 88, Home Alone 1990, this movie 89, and it really sort of serves as a bridge between the two, and that the kid like because he suffers just like Bruce Willis's character John McClane suffers. And just like John McClane has to go through it barefoot, so does this kid. He's barefoot. He's out in the snow barefoot. So I have to wonder if that was a nod to Die Hard.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And speaking of being out in the snow, they don't play it up too much, but towards the end, some running in the snow, of course, there's a little reminiscent of like The Shining, being chased through the maze. But they don't drag that out for too long. So yeah, the setup, the movie is really catches you off guard if you don't know what it is too, because it opens with a bunch of children having an innocent snowball fight when this bearded man just sort of wanders into their midst. And give the kids credit, they've been watching all that Stranger Danger PSA that was prevalent in the 80s. They're like, what the hell? And they get the hell out of there. And you don't know what to make of it at first. You're thinking this could be an innocent soul, this is just a guy that maybe just wants to recapture some childhood memories, and he's not a threat. But you very quickly find out he's super deranged. And it's kind of cool too, because they never go into too much detail about this guy. All we really know is that he's very disturbed, and that's it. And that he seems to think it would be amusing to attack a kid dressed as Santa Claus.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't really need to be fleshed out, but he's just a crazy guy who does crazy things.
I mean, to me, that works fine, because in the 80s, they'd already had a few, like, straight-up horror movies, like Silent Night, Deadly Night, or something like that, where they already had, like, an insane Santa killing people, so it's not like this movie really needed to justify itself, I don't think.
But, so basically, he's motivated by, he's mad at the mom, so he's going to kill her son, right?
Yeah, because, like...
he's mad at the mom for firing him.
Yeah, he finds him randomly, but then it's just a coincidence that he finds out that he's the son of that woman, I guess. We never even get to see, like, her recognizing him towards the end or anything like that. The movie ends fairly abruptly, which I guess as well. But I mean, at some point, she's going to recognize that it's the guy that she actually fired earlier that night for striking a child, no less.
For saying, "I don't like your face. You're not the real Santa Claus."
Yeah, like he doesn't like you.
Yeah, obviously.
Although, to her credit, like, sometimes you see these things where the kids are really bratty with the can. She wasn't really being that bratty. She was just being more sort of observant. But again, and he's lucky that, like, the mother wasn't there. Otherwise, it would have been lawsuits everywhere. But of course, if the mother was there, then maybe she would even have him arrested or something. Because you could do that, even though he just sort of tapped her. A parent still could, like, press charges against him, right, and at least get him held for the night. Sure. So if the mother was there, that could have prevented the events of the evening. But instead, the mother's not there, and the other mother, the boy's Thomas's mother, is there, and she just fires him on the spot. And
that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. Because you could even say, like, at first, like, he just likes children. He wants to hang out with these children and snowball. Oh, okay. Wait, being Santa, that's a good way to be with children. But then the first child is like, "You're not Santa." He shows his true colors type thing.
I mean, he seems like he was really enjoying it before then, though. He was all waving and smiling, and
So it seems to suggest it just took one little thing, and he snaps completely. I mean, really snaps. Which brings us, of course, to how he gets hooked up with Thomas. Because in the days before the internet, I don't know, I wasn't too aware of this until a few years ago, that there were, several services in the world that were sort of like proto-internet, you might call. And in France and Belgium, they had a service called Minitel that ran throughout the 80s. And the reason I became aware of it was because technically it ran right up to 2012. And it was in 2011, I don't know, somewhere online. And I read an article about it, talking about how it was going to shut down the next year, and how there were certain people in France, especially older people, that were not computer savvy, that were sad to see it go, because they were still using it well into the 21st century. And that's how I found out about Minitel. But Minitel was basically this sort of video text-based service that actually the French government controlled, I think. It was basically anybody that had a telephone. It was part of your telephone service. Okay. Everybody would get this console that would have like a weird keyboard thing and a screen, and everything was hooked up. And actually, it could do all sorts of stuff that the internet provides now. It's funny, you see like stuff about how in the 90s when people were like hooking up AOL and they have those commercials, it's like, look at all the things you can do online. It's like you could already do some of this stuff on stuff like Minitel, because things like online banking, shopping, text, chat rooms, including their version of porn, which is just like sex chat because there wasn't any real graphics or video or anything like that. You could do hotel reservations, all kinds of stuff. And it remained well into the 90s and 21st century, something that a lot of people who were used to it in the 80s just continued to use because it was provided.
Yeah, apparently in 2009 they still had 10 million monthly connections. So
there you go.
Pretty substantial.
So that's exactly. I guess that's why they never shut it down earlier, because people, even though the internet, what we know as the modern version of the internet, came along and obviously surpassed it, there were just a huge loyal customer base that were, I think, again, because a lot of them were older, maybe even they were a bit older in the 80s when it came out. They weren't really a tech savvy generation, and this was familiar. But what I didn't know until I saw this movie, although I have to say, I saw this movie years before I knew what Minitel was, so I didn't even really know what was going on. I saw this movie about 2003, maybe 2004. A friend of mine had a bootleg version of it, because I don't think it had a North American DVD release, and that's how I saw it. So I don't know what I thought it was at the time, because it was before I knew what Minitel was. But anyway.
I had to go look it up, too, because I wasn't familiar with it.
Yeah, basically the way it works is you wouldn't have your own... you don't have your own computing power or something like that. It's it connects to other things. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining, but there was a network called Transpac that connected everything. And anyway, nobody had like their own, like the screen didn't come with its own like CPU or anything, or not as we understand it. I guess there was some version of explaining it poorly, but it was it was a shared network type thing that went from a subscriber's analog telephone line. But it was very popular. And I guess Belgium was the other country where it was mainly offered. But apparently I'm seeing even Bell Canada experimented with it at some point. And as you might guess, it was mostly used in Quebec. They launched it sort of experimentally, I'm reading here. The principal information offering was the telephone directory. The majority of this, offered as bilingual, but the majority of the services offered were experimental ones originally offered in Quebec and completely francophone. And then a few other European things like Netherlands, Ireland, Germany. But it was only really France and Belgium where it lasted. It's pretty cool because it wasn't something you paid extra for. If you were a regular like telephone person, you just got this, which is pretty cool. Like you weren't paying any sort of extra monthly fee for this.
Yeah, that is cool. And so that's how he thinks he's talking to Santa Claus.
Yeah, right? He winds up like I don't know. Again, I don't know enough about it, but he like winds up on some sort of like message board where people can just leave messages for each other. I don't even know if they show a title for what it is. And his friend is kind of right. He's like, he could be talking to anyone. This could be a message board for perverts or something. And his friend is pretty close to the truth, but he's like, no, he must be the real Santa Claus. And there's where one of the translation errors comes in on at least the version on that we watched on Shudder, because there's a part where he says, "Where are you?" and it shows in the subtitles that he answers he's at the North Pole, which of course makes sense. But actually, it's not what he writes. He writes "OCL," which means in heaven, which is I think they should have kept because it's more weird.
Yeah.
But the only other real error I caught was there a part where it goes to her working at the store, and it shows the big Christmas crowd there, and there's an announcement saying they're going to close at 10. But actually, the announcement says they're going to close at midnight, but for whatever reason, subtitle says 10.
Oh, okay.
Which doesn't make much difference unless you want to count that it's a continuity error later, because the very next scene is her in the office talking to her, I don't know who that guy was, but like her co-manager or whatever, when he's talking about going over the accounts and stuff, and he mentions that it's 10:30. So if it's 10:30, we're already past close, but it doesn't matter because the whole point was they stay past close anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's just just a little something I thought.
Is it a normal thing to stay open that late on Christmas Eve?
No, I think they're trying to make a point that she's kind of like really money centered.
Right.
Because she's sort
like
of
workaholic.
Because at the meeting like that morning, she baffles her staff when she announces that they're going to actually turn it into a big event, right? She's like, we're going to bring in all sorts of performers and make it a big event and make it clear that this is Santa Claus's store and stuff. And they're all like, what? We can't do that in such short notice. And she's like, make it happen. Yeah. I think they're trying to show that she's really, as you said, a workaholic. And while she loves her son, is somewhat disconnected from him in the fact that she leaves him with the grandfather and I guess the caretakers a lot of the time. It's interesting, though, because you'd think maybe it's kind of a dysfunctional family, but it's not really. And you'd also think the kid would be kind of a little bastard, but he's really not. For all he is spoiled as he is, he's a good kid. He has a good relationship with his grandfather. and he's respectful with his mother. So it helps you root for him, of course. Whereas it's a little, whereas it's a little sort of different, the arc that they make Kevin go through, right? Kevin's arc is that he's a spoiled brat and he gets really pissed off at his family and he can get really mean and nasty. But the fact of the matter is, deep down, he's a good kid, but he has to go through some things to sort of understand that he's lucky to have a family. Whereas this kid, he's never bratty or mean. I mean, if I had said any of the things that Kevin said, I would have been grounded for like the rest of my life if I lashed out at my family the way Kevin did.
Well, that was the whole, the learning.
Right.
Kevin learned, not to take his family for granted and stuff.
Right. And this one, it just basically...
I mean, want a cheese pizza, man.
Yeah. And I mean, you can talk about a little bit of the coming of age, because Kevin has to learn how to take care of himself a little bit in this. This, it's like supercharged and ramped up. It has less to do with taking care of yourself. The kid's already pretty self-reliant. Right. And that he's used to being left to his own devices anyway. Even though technically he's never alone. The grandfather's there, but the grandfather is only so useful, and that he's diabetic and half blind, as the kid introduces him at the start when he arrests him to bring him to breakfast. He says, like,
his blindness seems to come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Because it shows like his POV sometimes, and it's like he's completely like he can only see like lights and shadows and stuff.
Yeah, everything's completely blurred.
But other times, like when they're playing some sort of Lord of the Rings type game, he seems to be able to see fine because he's looking at things and talking about it. And
although the kid has to do all the reading because he's reading everything out to him, right? He's like, "I do this, what happens?" And the kid has to tell him, "Yeah, they're playing some sort of Dungeons and Dragons type of role playing game thing." Yeah, so the kid has like no end of like things to do. And he even does have a friend who seemed to be, I think he was in like a Cub Scout uniform when he was over, when they were doing the Minitel stuff. But
it's kind of odd to me that the mom wanted to stay late on Christmas Eve just to do the accounting.
Yeah, it was like just an extra chance to make more money. Like, she comes across pretty greedy. As I said, I wonder if there's a bit of a message there too, because they really ram home that she's some sort of like money focused person. And then there's the whole thing of like when she's finally trying to get home, her stupid sports car runs off the road because she's going through snow. It's like, yeah, maybe don't drive your dumb sports car in a snowstorm. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think the movie's trying too hard to tell a bunch of lessons and stuff like that.
It was just an excuse for her not to be home.
I found an article about the end of Minitel, but it's not the one I read because it's dated June 2012, the year of it. But that's kind of interesting to go on. Other countries looked on in awe and admiration, and the French were proud. As President Jacques Chirac boasted, "Today a baker in Aubervilliers knows perfectly how to check his bank account on the Minitel. Can the same be said of the baker in New York?" Oh, shots fired.
Shots fired, indeed.
You think you're hip, New York? You got nothing on France with the Minitel system. But yeah, I wish they could have a thing here that says exactly. Well, I mean, maybe not exactly because I don't want to get too technical, but sort of a better way for me to explain how it works, because I think how I said is a little vague and unsatisfying. But distributed free of charge by the then state-owned France Telecom. Yeah, so even the poorest of households contained cassettes subsidized by the taxpayer. Content, blah, blah. I'll jump back to that later, find out some more things. But it is very interesting, the stuff about Minitel. Because, ever since like the late 70s, there have been various services that dabbled with the idea of what the internet would become. It's funny just how much the internet has changed, because even some people watching this could be young enough to like not really remember the early internet like we do. Like we were both around, we can both remember our lives before the internet, and we can remember what the internet was like sort of when it first became widely available in North America. And it's very different from what it is now. The main thing, of course, is it was slower. It was slower in dial-up, but...
Oh, yeah, dial-up, man. Yeah, terrible.
But there was also a tremendous amount of freedom back then, because nowadays everything is subsidized and stuff, and everything's a pay service, and everything's a membership. Everything you go to, they want you to make an account for. Like back in the early days, you didn't have to make an account for shit.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted stuff, it was there if you knew how to find it. You didn't have to give them your email address and make an account and all this nonsense and connect it to a million other things. Nowadays, everybody, and this really plays up to the conspiracy people that talk about, companies like Google and Apple spying on us, which of course there is some truth to, about how, link this to your Facebook account, which is linked to your Twitter, which is linked to your Instagram, get it all linked. And it's like, yeah, it's really convenient, but it's also really good for us while we spy on your browsing habits and the information you put in. But yeah, back then there weren't a bunch of things to become members of and stuff. So
right,
in many ways it was freer, even if it wasn't as good or as fast.
right. Well, we're like willingly giving people, knowledge on our buying habits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's stuff's definitely happening.
Yeah, I like the internet right around
advertising.
Right around the start of the century, right around 2000, 2001, because it wasn't as slow as it had been a few years ago. So we made the move to cable internet where it wasn't dial-up and DSL or whatever it's called. And there still was a lot of freedom and stuff. And then, of course, around 2000, you had Napster. And then other sort of file sharing things came, and you could just get anything almost. I still lament all the great stuff I lost when I lost the computer that had my Napster stuff, because I got so much stuff that you just never get again. Like cool, like live bootlegs of stuff and bands doing weird performances at in the radio and stuff. Now some of that stuff you can find on YouTube, but you don't know, because I think at least the audio of it was funny. It was like I don't remember what year it was supposed to be from. Probably sometime in the late '90s. It was the Foo Fighters doing a radio thing where they were playing some songs acoustically. But at one point, Dave Grohl starts playing "With Arms Wide Open" by Creed, and he's just really making fun of it. He's like, "With arms wide open." He's like, "Into the sunlight." He's really going overboard on it. It's really funny. Has some really cool stuff on there. I think you can actually hear that on YouTube, but there was a lot of other stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a bunch of cool stuff like that too that I lost, because I was one of the people that got kicked off because I had a Metallica song.
I was gonna say thanks, Metallica.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Lars.
That was only beneficial to me because I had the fast internet at university at the time. So, if I was at home, it would you get like one song a night or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I did it all pretty much at college too. Look, we had the Dallas servers or whatever they used.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, as I've pointed out a few times, my family was not what you would call a tech-savvy family. To this day, they're not. My parents, oh my God, when I switch the input on the TV, so I have the PlayStation on, my parents are lost, and me to come down and switch it back to TV, right? But for whatever reason, we were in on the ground floor with internet. Like, we got it in 1996.
That's probably about when we got it too, somewhere around in there, 95, 96.
Yeah, I was in grade 7. I was in grade 7. It was like the first half of grade 7 for me.
We got our Pentium, Pentium chip, and had. You remember when encyclopedias were the big thing? Like, oh man, you don't need your encyclopedias anymore.
Yeah.
Throw those things away. Just put it on the computer.
Yeah, we had like an Encarta edition that had all this Encarta stuff on it. I remember doing that too. Because like the first few times I used the internet, that's basically what I did. I remember researching stuff, and one of the things the guy, as I said, a guy came over that we kind of knew and showed us how to do stuff. And one of the things he showed was like, it was really exciting. He showed like the video clip that they have from the 30s of the Hindenburg crashing, which again you can call up on YouTube or any number of things. So this is before YouTube. The humanity guy. I just remember being very impressed by like seeing a video clip of like history being played in front of me. It's like you don't just have to read stuff; you can watch stuff. Like you don't just have to read a bunch of text. There's things you can watch on here. Like, oh wow. Yeah.
wave of the future.
Yeah. But man, I love those commercials from like the mid 90s for like stuff like AOL, like these long commercials with the dumb families talking about all the great stuff they can do. It's like, I'm buying theater tickets. It's like, oh, they're going to be sold out. Not if you use AOL and stuff like that. This is amazing.
It's all, like educational and stuff. And it's like, hey, there's porn too.
Yep. Well, I found my way to that pretty fast.
Yeah.
As one does. Again, you have to remember, I was like 13 when this got going. So
back in the picture would have to download a little bit at a time.
I remember like
just waiting.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can remember before getting into like porn when it was just like looking at like non-naked stuff. I can remember a friend of mine. I told you I had friends that were obsessed with wrestling, but I wasn't. Like going to the site and we were looking at pictures of the Nitro Girls.
Oh yeah,
remember them? And I mean I never watched the stuff, but I know that the wrestler Diamond Dallas Page. He was like one of them was his girlfriend, and I like wanted to kill him. And he was in a few of the pictures, like with his hands all over. It's like, look at me, look what I got. Like I'm like, fuck you, Diamond Dallas Page. I hope you die. So that's how I knew who he was.
He teaches yoga now. He has his own style of yoga.
That's kind of interesting because like it's almost the opposite of wrestlers in a way because it's very zen and laid back. And the whole point of wrestlers, at least their personas, right? They're really in your face and intense. So that's kind of different.
Well, apparently it's like, they all have like back problems and stuff because
I'm sure
being thrown around for years and years. So it's really beneficial to them to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's his whole thing. They talked all about it when, the Jake the Snake, the documentary was, he was, in and out of rehab and drug problems and stuff. So
yeah, I saw some of that. That's kind of pretty heartwarming because like he's like because all these fans donated to him to help him, and he was just so touched. He's like, it wasn't all for nothing. Like people really liked me and cared about me, and yeah, I mean, I was never into that, but I mean, it was nice to see, that these people they weren't just going to forget about him, and they did care and they wanted to help, and I thought that was very nice. I remember seeing some stuff about that. Jake the Snake Roberts, I think.
And then Scott Hall shows up at one point, and he's just as bad a shape as.
And nobody likes
Jake.
it.
He's like a crackhead, and yeah. I think they were both on crack. I think is what their thing was.
I wouldn't be surprised. Wrestlers back in those days, they'd be on anything within reach.
Yeah. It probably starts as coke, but that becomes not as available, I guess, as years go on. Plus,
just getting addicted to painkillers and stuff for all their injuries and stuff. And as I've seen a lot of the backstage, they'd be injured and they'd have like the I don't know, Vince McMahon or whoever yelling at them, you have to go on. Like
right.
They did a thing this past year actually on of all things, the Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, all about that, about like WWE and all the bad things Vince McMahon did to the wrestlers over the years. Because I mean,
really?
you know how he leaned into the character of being evil. It almost makes you forget, like in real life, he was, he was pretty much just as evil. Just because of the fact that he got to play a character and wink at it didn't actually make it go away. That no, he was really mistreating a lot of these guys and screwing them over and endangering a lot of their health.
Oh, probably still is.
Mm-hmm. And there was a thing that showed a guy interviewing him about it. And like he was like asking, and he was saying like he feels no remorse and he did nothing wrong and stuff because that's how these people always are, defiant to the end. Because he's like these guys wrestled for you, they put their bodies on the line, and you made millions with them doing it. He's like they were employees, or I don't know, something like that. He gave like the most dickish.
This may mark the first time we've talked about wrestling on this show.
Yeah. Well, it was always something I wasn't ever into, but I was certainly peripherally aware of. I had friends that were way into it.
Yeah.
So I had to watch them and hear about it.
I like the concept of it. I think it's ridiculous, and I like that aspect of it. But I'm not like seriously going to sit down and watch matches because I give a shit.
Probably the most interesting thing about wrestling's popularity today is that it's not getting new kids hooked. The main wrestling fans are people our age that were fans back in the day that just never stopped.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's wrong.
Oh yeah,
I don't care.
Sure, I mean, to each their own, but yeah, there are definitely some crazy ones out there.
But it's also the main reason I had to learn how to mute things on Twitter, because every once in a while, like, I'd see like words I didn't understand, and it was everybody like reacting to like SmackDown or something like that. Like, once I saw the word
Yeah.
Kyrie, and I was like, Kyrie? Kingdom Hearts? But no, some girl wrestler. Like that, and that made me angry. Yeah, so I
Yeah,
filtered out most of them now. Like, and some of them I didn't think I had to anymore. I'm like, people are still talking about the Undertaker. Isn't he like 106? Like,
yeah, he still wrestles though.
yeah, which I think
He,
really shows how he must have not made much money, despite being one of the biggest names for all those years.
right.
To still have to do it at this age, like, he shouldn't have to, man.
Like Ronda Rousey's in there now. Like,
I know that.
talk about something that would, turn me off of something more than that.
Very true. But yeah, for a long time I would get a lot of those things trending on the side. And sometimes I knew what they were. They were
Yeah.
pretty blatant. Other times I was like, what is this? And I click, and it's just a bunch of people having weird reactions to whatever happened that night. And I was like, that's fine, I guess. It makes sense. That's what people do about every show. I'm not going to pick wrestling
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow it, but I know enough about the current people in it.
I really,
Just from
I really don't know anything about
Twitter.
the more current generation. The main thing I remember is that, like, at least in the last 10 years, there was a guy called Roman Reigns that apparently they really tried hard to make a star, and nobody liked him, and yet they keep shoving him in everybody's face. I know that because they also talked about that on the John Oliver thing. But basically, they were like, this guy's going to be a star, whether you like it or not. We'll shove him down your throats if we have to. And the fans would bring all these signs talking about how much he sucked and stuff. And even when he was supposed to be like the good guy and winning, they'd boo him mercilessly, which is pretty funny. But I don't know. What are you supposed to do about that as a fan? I mean, isn't that breaking part of like the reality you're trying to buy into? Because you're just saying, like, you can take him away because I don't like him, even though the whole point I thought was to indulge in the fantasy that these guys are really winning and losing and stuff. Like, I don't know. I understand the fans resenting having somebody shoved in their face and told like he's the good guy and he's the hero and you should like him, but at the same time, I don't know. Very
Well, you love to hate. It's like a lot of people hated John Cena because he was like the everyday, the good old boy type guy.
he was boring.
Right, exactly. But he always won. So
Yeah.
people were mad at him. It was kind of like the opposite of Hulk Hogan. Like even though Hulk Hogan was like pretty much the exact same thing, people loved him for the most part.
Yeah. I guess back when Hulk Hogan did it, it was at least a little bit newer. Then it gets really tired.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing. But
speaking of wrestling, have you seen the what's the toy show on Netflix?
The Toys That Made Us.
Toys.
I
Yeah,
haven't seen the wrestling one yet. I watched the Lego one. And the Turtles.
You may
one.
not. Oh, I haven't seen the Lego one.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a Lego one and Turtles.
I watched the Turtles and I watched the wrestling and maybe one more.
I will watch the rest.
They've done Transformers, right? Yeah, they did Transformers last season.
That's my favorite. Those are my favorite toys of all time. Got some in this room, although they aren't the good ones. There's a couple I got a couple movie ones up there, and I don't really like the movie ones, but those are back when the first movie came out in 2007. I've got Bumblebee at my apartment, but here I've also got Jazz and Barricade. They're up there, but they're not in very good shape. Those movie toys were really hard to put together to transform. It was crazy bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, of all the toys I'm most nostalgic and love the most and would still pay money for as an adult, Transformers is number one.
Yeah.
I love Transformers.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles all the way for me, but I don't know. It just like defined me for a few years when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
Like between the cartoon and the movie and the toys, it was such a great time to be alive.
Oh yeah, that was totally our generation. That was right at the thing. Why my generation was obsessed with ninjas, which you can really all lay at the feet of Frank Miller, really, because Frank Miller really brought in. I mean, ninja and samurai stuff had been used in Western culture before, but it was really Frank Miller that kind of made it seem hip and cool, which he did in Daredevil and the comic Ronin. And of course, the whole point of Ninja Turtles when they first made it was they were just spoofing Daredevil. Because that's why they had the Foot Clan instead of the Hand and stuff like that. Yeah. But that wasn't something I wouldn't find out till I was a lot older.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I was older either.
But around the same
It makes
time,
a lot
there
of sense.
ninjas were just so. You had some various ninjas. You had American Ninja, a few of
Yeah.
those, Revenge of the Ninja in the
Oh, yeah.
80s, and then of course taking full piggybacking. Speaking of this movie and Home Alone, piggybacking on that, combine Home Alone with ninjas, and you've got Three Ninjas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which has a Home Alone ripoff scene, which I always defend because in many ways it's more logical than the Home Alone. Because in Home Alone, unlike this movie, because he tries to call the cops, is that he knows in advance they're coming, and he even does call the cops, but he calls them in a weird, elaborate way, so that they'll show up at the other house after he's done all his tricks and put everything at risk for no reason. In Three Ninjas, they find out these guys are coming to get them, and they say, "Let's call the cops." And they say, "Wait, our grandfather doesn't take us seriously as ninjas, but if we can stop these guys on our own, he will take us seriously." So they do it and it's totally believable that kids that age who are in training would do something stupid like that. So I always defend that as like not as good. Of course, it's not a very good movie or anything, but that movie is more logical.
Not to go off on a tangent about Three Ninjas, but did we ever discuss why they have a Japanese grandfather?
No, they just do.
Because these kids are as white as they get, right? They're like the fucking Home Alone kids or something.
I don't know. All I can figure is that their grandmother was like some American nurse in Japan during the war or something. And he's the one trace of Japanese they have in their family, is all I can figure. But I haven't seen that in a lot of years. Maybe they address it. I don't know. I'd like to watch it again just for how
No, just, I mean, they don't look Asian at all.
Oh God, no. Because it wouldn't get past another generation. I don't know. And that's true too. Like,
about,
the Asian genes always beat the other genes, right?
They really do. I mean,
even black. White's the wimpiest, right? If you're half white, that's the half that's not going to show up. It'll it'll be there. Someone who has a a white mother and a black father, they won't be the same black as their father, but they will be black. They will not be white. It's kind of unfair in a way. Like they should be able to. They're half Caucasian, so they should be able to identify as Caucasian if they want to. But society says, well, you look brown, so you're black.
Exactly.
I remember seeing a thing, Trevor Noah doing stand-up about that, where he was detained at the airport, and they were asking him about his ethnicity for some reason. I don't even know why. And he's like, well, I'm part white. I'd like to play on the white part right now.
He's like from South Africa or somewhere, right?
Yeah, somewhere like that. He's got the accent. He's a smart guy. He can speak a lot of languages. I'm always jealous of people who can speak a lot of languages.
Really, that job is a hard job. The Daily Show host,
yeah, it's I don't even blame him. I did stop watching around the time but I don't really blame him. I don't know.
No, I don't dislike him. I've never really liked the Daily Show, even back when like Greg Kilborn was doing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like the height years. I like Jon Stewart a lot, and I like how Jon Stewart has basically stayed retired, which is pretty classy because a lot of these guys can't stay retired. They have to do something else, and like Jon Stewart realizes he had an amazing run, and to do something else would kind of tarnish it a bit. And he still says stuff and shows up places, but he's not like, oh, we got a new show for you. Like, it'll be even better than Daily Show. It's like, no. And I'm sure somebody probably had that idea, right? John, you're out of your contract with Comedy Central or whatever it is. Now you can do something else. Like, no thanks. I did enough.
You remember when Jon Stewart was like an actor? Like he was in movies and stuff?
Yeah, I saw him in that Alien movie.
Oh yeah. I watched that the other day. Fucking yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Why can't I think of its goddamn name? That's gonna drive me nuts. It's Class of '99. Yeah. Holy shit! It's one of Orc's favorite movies. I remember.
Yeah.
He would talk about it a lot.
Well,
anyway, he's in.
You want to say Frightener?
Yeah,
it's not Frightener.
What's funny
The
is
Faculty.
Yeah, The Faculty. Thank you. So what's funny is like years ago on the Daily Show, he had Josh Hartnett on, and I think most of the crowd was really surprised when they ran the scene, like showing that we did a scene together, and shows Josh Hartnett stabbing him in the eyeball with the pen. It's pretty cool. But he was also in Big Daddy.
Yeah.
He was the actual father of the kid that Adam Sandler had. He shows up at the end saying like, I won't press charges. I know he was in a few others, but those are the two that I remember. Not big parts, but he was there.
Yeah.
I never saw him play like a leading part, although he might have done that in a movie or two, but I don't think I ever saw that. take a look and see what his filmography is.
Clicked on Stewart, and this is not the right one.
Yeah, there's also, I think, a Green Lantern called Jon Stewart. People have heard me bitch about how much I don't like Green Lantern. I don't like any version, but a lot of people say Jon Stewart version is one of the better ones. Okay, fine, I don't care. Film, here we go.
Find him.
Filmography, let's see. Okay, he was in the first Wives Club, but his scenes were deleted. But he's in Half Baked, which I don't remember. Oh yeah, I knew that he had a cameo in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, but so did a million people. I forgot that he was in Death to Smoochie because I haven't seen that in so long. And then he has a bunch of cameos as himself in various things. He has a cameo of himself in the movie The Beaver? That's the most fucked up thing I've ever heard. So that Mel Gibson movie, The Beaver, where he like talks to a puppet and shit, has Jon Stewart
I haven't seen it, but
as himself. And he also does a cameo of himself in the Ultimate Edition of Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, which I've never seen. Let's see that Ultimate cut. Release the Snyder cut. That'll fix everything, apparently, according to a bunch of people whining on Twitter. These terrible DC superhero movies will be fine if you just release these cuts. Like, no, they won't. They'll just be longer. But anyway, not going to get into that.
Zack Snyder is the problem.
Yeah.
I think.
We don't want more Zack Snyder. Apparently, he's actually has an upcoming film coming up this year called Irresistible that he wrote and directed. That has Steve Carell, Chris Cooper, Will Sasso of all people, Deborah Messing, Topher Grace. But yeah, so that's interesting. Maybe that's the next stage of Jon Stewart's career because yeah, he's got a movie coming out that he wrote and directed. Look for it this year in theaters. Irresistible. There's somebody else I was looking up. Oh, now I remember. So last night I watched Bottle Rocket, which is, of course, Wes Anderson's first feature-length film. And I was looking him up. His next movie comes out in 2020. And it has, a lot of the usual suspects in it. A lot of his cast. I think Frances McDermott is like the main character. Bill Murray's in there. But a new person has been added. And I think they fit the world perfectly. Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler's going to be in a Wes Anderson film. That really makes me excited. He seems like he'd fit in. So that'll be cool. I don't remember what that's called. It's about something about going on in France during, I don't know. Anyway, I was just looking him up last night to see what he was up to. So that'll be cool. Didn't much care for Bottle Rocket. I didn't think it was bad or anything. But it's definitely before his movies, he got sort of his voice and the way his movies work. It's fine. It's okay. I don't dislike it. I'm not hearing you. What the hell just happened? Why do?
Sorry.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and when I saw Bottle Rocket, I had seen a lot of his other stuff before I saw Bottle Rocket, so
me too.
It was kind of just like a checklist type film for me, and I liked it for what it was. Not something you're going to revisit very often.
It's the first time I ever found an Owen Wilson character like unlikable. Like I really didn't like him. It's weird. He just seemed so different from the Owen Wilson I know. I can't really put my finger on it. And the short hair threw me too. I don't know why, but it makes him look completely different. He looked like Jake Busey. Yeah. I think I thought that was Jake Busey for the first few seconds, even though obviously I knew that it was Owen Wilson was one of the stars. It's a really weird, meandering movie that, like, I don't really understand why any of the things in the movie happen. I'm sure that's the point. Like, I have no idea why these guys are obsessed with, like, being criminals. Like, they don't seem like they need to be. It's just like, let's be criminals and pull off a heist. I don't know. It was okay. But, yeah, he doesn't really stand up to the rest of his work. But that's the case with a lot of early movies. And I'm sure there's some people out there that are fans of it, and I'm not going to badmouth it. I'm just saying I couldn't really find much to like about it in particular. But
yeah, I remember when it came out, I always wanted to see it because I like Bottle Rockets a lot at the time.
Yeah.
So
it just seems like that's the title because it's one of those movies that they can't really come up with a title for. They're like, hey, there's some Bottle Rockets in this. We'll call it Bottle Rocket, which I'm completely fine with because as a person that like, tries to like write stories and stuff, one of the things I'm terrible at is titles. I'm really bad at titles. It's always the last thing I come up with almost always.
Yeah.
I have so many like written things that are untitled, or just have really dumb titles in place, like to be replaced at a later date. So a lot of my stuff have really stupid titles because I'm just like, I'll come up with a better title later, and then I never do.
Yeah. I don't
So
really think a title's that important.
No. Well, sometimes it's easy enough if it's like Star Wars or something, because you know what you're getting.
I mean, if it's a bad title, is another thing.
Brad Pitt is one of the producers of Jon Stewart's upcoming film, Irresistible.
Yeah, his company's probably making it.
Yeah, probably.
That's where those guys make the real money.
Yeah, it's true. Being a producer is, I mean, now, like, once you're an established producer, it's very hard to, like, not make money doing almost nothing. You just you kick in some money for something you know is going to be successful anyway, and then you rake it in. That's why somebody like Jerry Bruckheimer is, like, so rich.
Yeah.
Because he was, like, main producer on, what, like, CSI or something, I think? One of the really really popular shows, right? And then the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which are some of the most financially successful movies of all time. I'm like, what did Jerry Bruckheimer really have to do with these movies creatively? Nothing. But still, you need producers. You need producers to make movies. So I'm not trying to, like, I'm just saying, you get to a point where once you have a few movies under your belt that have worked for you, unless you start backing some really terrible movies, you're just going to continue to rake it in. Like somebody like Jerry Bruckheimer would have to make like would have to invest in several massive flops to even really feel a dent.
Yeah, these days it happens.
It does. I mean, yeah, there's some big flops every year. Sometimes, though, like, I just have no idea why they thought it was a good idea in the first place. Like that Monster Trucks movie that came out a couple years ago. That had like a January release, had a budget of like well over $100 million. It's not based, and I mean, in a way, it's good. Like, as we say, like, too many movies aren't original. This is original. It's not based on anything, but I just mean, how do you expect, like, you're going to make your money back on a movie about a weird monster inside trucks, like, with not even any bankable stars in January? Like, isn't that a recipe for disaster? But give them credit for trying.
Wasn't it called Monster Trucks?
It was called Monster Trucks, yeah. Maybe they thought that would excite people. People like monsters and trucks, and they like what we call monster trucks. But this is trucks that has a monster getting inside. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. Most of the time, studios.
It's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
Not a very good film, though.
Don't think I'll ever bother watching it. But I just mean, even before it came out, it just had flop written all over it, right? Because a lot of the time, because of like they know that January and February are kind of dead times, and that's where you put the movies that aren't like a big deal. That's where you slot them in. Like, what's the only movie in February that ever did well was Black Panther, right? Black Panther blew the doors off, and I think they said they did February because it was like Black History Month, and the movie had a lot to do with, I guess, Black culture and identity. I don't know, maybe people decided it did, whether it did or not, and that's fine. I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. But I think we can all remember that they had stuff like they had like various black groups like going to it as groups, and that's fine. Anyway, tremendously successful movie. Even though I would put it on the lower spectrum of Marvel movies, like I don't even think it's top 10 for me personally. But anyway, it's fine.
Yeah. You need to wonder though if it wasn't for the race stuff, would it have been as popular and as successful?
Yeah. And as many people pointed out, I mean, obviously it's good that we're having a prominent black character, but it's not like it's the first time it ever happened.
No. And it's not that I think that's a bad thing. I mean,
And I get it though, because even though we point out movies like Blade and stuff, it is true that this movie didn't just have a black lead, but like almost all the main parts were black and good.
Right.
Right. And that is a bit of a difference. So I'm not going to quibble or anything. But anyway.
I didn't say, oh man, Blade has got a black vampire in it. I was like, it's got fucking Wesley Snipes in it, man.
Yeah.
I know who Wesley Snipes is. I mean, God.
Yeah.
You know?
They're going to do a Morbius movie, so I assume they'll do a new Blade movie. Seemed kind of stupid to do Morbius and not Blade, because their paths should cross at some point.
Who should they cast as Blade? The new Blade?
Probably somebody I don't know, because I don't know enough actors nowadays. But I mean, he wouldn't be
It'll
young.
probably be a Brit too. It'll be somebody from England.
I mean, the whole point of Blade is being half vampire is that he's been around a long time because he ages a lot slower. But still, I like a more established guy. I wanted to be like older than 35. I'd say like I wouldn't want a guy in his 20s for Blade. That's the main thing I'd say. Like, so if you're going to name someone like those black actors that are, I would just say too young. You know, get somebody who's older. On the other hand, they don't think Idris Elba is too old to play anybody.
No.
Idris Elba is like 60 years old, and they keep thinking, yeah, he can play this guy who's supposed to be like 30. I think he can play this guy who's supposed to be like 30. And I'm just like, I don't dislike Idris Elba. And sometimes if it's like not specifically a black character, it's not me saying, oh, I don't want a black guy. It's me saying Idris Elba's too fucking old. But anyway.
He doesn't look that old, though. He doesn't look as old as he is.
He's aged very well. I'm not going to. And a lot of actors do, right? And they're able to play. I mean, look at Tom Cruise. He refuses to age.
Yeah.
What's his name? Speaking of the Marvel movies, you would think what's his name is too old, but since he doesn't age, Paul Rudd.
Oh, Paul Rudd, yeah.
Since he doesn't age.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's 50.
He was great for 50.
Yeah. I mean, I know I look young for my age, so I'm thinking that's a pretty good target for me at 50. Look comparable age-wise to Paul Rudd.
The first thing I remember seeing Idris Elba in was The Wire, and I didn't know that he was British. He plays that role so well.
I know. That's a great guy.
I watched this show, Snowfall. I finally finished up season 3. It was the John Singletary, before he passed away. I think they got one more season coming out, but that was his big show he was working on.
British.
But anyway, the lead, it's about drugs, selling drugs in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And the lead of that show is a British kid that you never know is British. Like he plays like an LA gangster, pretty well.
Well, the guy that plays Finn in Star Wars is super British.
Yeah.
And he does a really good job of and that's my question. I wonder why in Star Wars, which is full of characters with British accents anyway, did they tell him to change his accent, or was it his own idea?
I had to have. Why would he have an American accent, but Daisy Ridley or whatever has got a British accent?
That's what I'm saying. Going back to the very first movie, there are lots of characters with British accents. So it's not like it'd be like, well, there's accents all over the place. It's Star Wars, right? So it seems odd to me. Like, did they say to them, look, there's going to be a lot of Americans and Chinese watching this movie, and it's just going to, throw them for a loop if they see a black guy with a British accent. like what? Come on. I can only imagine that was what went on, unless it was his own idea. Sometimes actors do have their idea. He's just like, well, I just think Finn talks this way, or maybe he wanted to work on it. I don't know. Anyway, he's a really cool, interesting guy. But yeah, just like Idris, he has an accent, very strong accent, just like Idris Elba. When you hear him talk, and you're like, wow, that's Finn. Wow, give him credit for how well he can do a bland American Canadian accent, whatever you want to call
it. Like Christian Bale, man, those guys have really hard British accents, but they do American great.
Yeah. What was interesting about Christian Bale was obviously he had to do American to play Batman, but how whenever he did press or interviews for Batman, he kept the American accent up because he thought it was important for continuity. I'm thinking, continuity? You're an actor playing a part, but do whatever you want. I don't care. I thought that was odd. He thought people might find it jarring to see him speak in his normal voice. I'm like, they know you're an actor. They know you're Welsh. So
it is jarring, though. I would agree, but it's not like it matters.
It's not jarring to me. It would only be jarring if he was dressed up as Batman doing it. I don't know. I understand that actors change their accents from time to time, so it doesn't mean anything to me. But that was his own idea to speak that way in interviews and stuff. Nobody told him to. So whatever. Sometimes guys get really, touchy about the accents because, this is a touchy asshole anyway, but Russell Crowe. When Russell Crowe, who's Australian, was doing that god awful Robin Hood reboot, whatever you want to call it. Man, I saw the movie in theaters. What a disappointment. Anyway, when he was doing press for that, like somebody who interviewed him was asking him about the accent, and he was saying something how like he didn't want to just be British. He was like interested in, I don't know, like Irish or Scottish or something like that too. And the guy said something about it being maybe a little muddled or that it reminded him of something like this. And Russell Crowe got really pissed off. He's like, fuck off. And he pulled off his stuff and left because he was mad the guy didn't believe the accent or something. I don't know. Just, classic Russell Crowe behavior.
Russell Crowe's not a good example of someone that does it well.
No.
There's been plenty of movies he's done that his accent kind of comes and goes.
Yeah. Ironically, one of the best times he does like an American accent is really early, is before he was even a big star, was my favorite Western, The Quick and the Dead. Like his accent doesn't waver in that movie. And yet it's kind of wavering all over the place because again, they don't know what accent to use for Gladiator, right? That's the other thing. This is what they always do whenever like we have ancient people. Ancient people are just supposed to sound kind of weird and off, but we don't know how they're supposed to sound.
Yeah.
Right? Just European. Just make them sound European, despite the fact that's tons of countries and tons of accents and languages. So yeah, so his accent is wildly different in parts of that film. And you have to remember, like, it's because he doesn't know what he's supposed to be going for. Like, well, none of us sound like ancient Romans. There's no point in even trying that. So,
well, that doesn't make them sound British.
Yeah.
It seems to be what they go for in those movies. There's a lot of movies that do that.
It's funny listening because I think he just lost his accent entirely naturally, was, of course, Mel Gibson. But if you watch something like The First Lethal Weapon, you'll hear his accent just come out every once in a while, and it's very jarring. I'm trying to remember where he says it really funny in one of the scenes in The First Lethal Weapon. I can't remember where it is now, but it's
the you remember the movie we did with Anthony Hopkins, where they were sailing around? I forget the name of it, but
wait,
we did it on the show.
Do you mean Dead Calm?
No,
because I was going to Dead Calm.
It was around that same time period. Though. It was a water film.
Because that's Sam Neill. Sam Neill was in Dead Calm. We did. Anthony Hopkins was in our water films. Why can't I remember that?
But anyway, like they were all speaking British.
Right. Oh, I know. Yeah, it was The Bounty, which had Mel Gibson, an early Mel Gibson. That's right. Captain Bligh was the captain was Anthony Hopkins, and Mel Gibson was Christian. Yeah, that's right.
But weren't those guys supposed to be like Spanish or something? Like it's based on real events.
Yeah, they were English.
Whatever they were. Oh, they were English. Okay,
they were English sailors. Although I'm not saying all of them were. They might have had some guys in there, but they were technically part of the British Navy. But yeah, that's right. I forgot that Mel Gibson had been in a movie with Anthony Hopkins. It's a good movie. I saw the original one. The 84 one is called Bounty. They did one in the early 60s called Mutiny on the Bounty, which isn't bad. And actually, many years ago, before I lived in Halifax, but they still do this every year. They do a thing called the Tall Ships, where various ship type things come in and you can gawk at them and stuff. One of the Tall Ships one year, many years ago, was the ship they shot on for the movie Mutiny on the Bounty, which I think is 1962. So that boat is still preserved to this day and still goes around. So I've actually been on that ship, walking around on it. It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Anyway, back to this movie. I have to say, I'm not really a fan of a lot of those Christmas horror movies that people watch this time of year. I mean, Black Christmas I love, but the over-the-top ones like A Silent Night, Deadly Night, or I don't know, there's other ones, obviously. Santa's Sleigh and stuff like that. And
there's not many good ones. That's the problem.
Yeah. But I mean, I understand that a lot of them are supposed to be silly anyway, and you just enjoy them for the silliness, but I don't even like them on that level is the problem. But I like this movie a lot because it plays things so straight. It never says, oh, this kid has to fight off this guy. What a hilarious situation. No, they're saying, this guy is crazy and dangerous, and this poor kid thinks he's the real Santa, and he's fighting for his life and his grandfather's life. I actually really like that this movie plays everything totally straight. I realize
Right,
certain
it's
people,
like
it's going to take them off guard. They might even, put them off it. I don't know, but I really like that.
we're supposed to laugh at Daniel Stern getting hit in the face with a brick, but like this guy's like getting like legit, like
Yeah, well, that's the difference, right? Like the
getting
other one goes
stabbed
for
and-
a cartoonish approach, right? Like the violence doesn't have
right, yeah.
any real world consequences. Whereas,
Even though throwing a brick like 3 stories and hitting someone square in the skull, I don't see that being something you would get up from. Much less take like 4 or 5 more bricks in the face.
oh, if you drop a brick from like a foot on somebody's head, they're probably could
I
be
know.
dead. Like, so tossing it
It's-
off 3 stories, his head would just be a caved-in mess.
I know. That's what's so funny about it, because he takes like 5 of them
Yeah.
directly to the skull, and he just gets mad like,
Yeah, good old Daniel
"Damn,
Stern.
I'm gonna kill that kid."
Who he plays the father in one of the worst sequels of all time, Christmas Story 2.
Yeah, which I haven't seen, but
Man,
I
like
did see
it'll
that
just
he's in
make
it.
you, even if you don't love, like, I get it, like some people love that movie and it's a little overboard, although I really like it and stuff. But like, even if you don't like love the original, the sequel will still make you sick. It's just such a piece of shit cash in thing. It's too bad, like, how in like the last like 10-15 years that movie's become so popular and commercialized. Like, you can buy all sorts of junk from it, which I think is really against the spirit of the movie. I mean, some of it's kind of cool. Like, even up on the street behind me up there, one of the houses, I don't know if it's up this year, but at least for a couple years, up in their like window of their living room, they had like the leg lamp that they would put up for Christmas. I think that's pretty cool. But I mean, I do think they've totally gone overboard with the merch from that movie. And man, and not only was the sequel bad, but they did a live, they've been doing like live musicals the last few years on TV. The live version of Christmas Story Live, I watched like 90% of that last year, and it's god awful. And it's full of really talented people, but it just misses the whole point of the movie entirely. It's really, and none of the songs are good. It's bad. I mean, even if you like musicals, it's hard to like that kind of. None of it's good.
Yeah. That's Bob Clark also, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that's what's always amazing. Bob Clark gave us 2 of the best Christmas movies, and they're both so different. One is a straight up, one of the arguably the first slasher ever. Forget Christmas, and then one is a heartwarming cult classic Christmas movie, which is the first of like the really good ones that I've watched this year. And I'll watch it again soon, because I watched that back in my apartment before I came here, and it didn't feel like it counted because I need a Christmas tree up. So hopefully it'll be on the next few days and I can watch it again. But yeah, just for the sake of this episode, we can open this up and just talk about some Christmas movies in general, because it's not something we've really done on this show, so why the heck not?
You need to go check out Christmas Vacation 2.
I knew they did that, didn't they?
That is a really good sequel.
How many? No. Does it have anybody from the original cast in it?
Randy Quaid.
Oh yeah, he needed the money. Isn't it amazing how Randy Quaid just in real life turned into that character? Like, he's just as insane. Like, for the last 12 years or something, Randy Quaid has been living in Toronto because he thinks he and his wife or whoever are hiding out from some sort of a group of assassins that targets celebrities. Like, that's not one, like, that's not something like, or he went through a drug binge and then he was like, okay, no, he still says that. To this day, as far as I know, he still maintains that that's what's going on, that this group is hunting him. Oh yeah, because he's a big celebrity for one thing. He gets his like delusions from the same place that fucking Child Star does. Corey Feldman. Remember Corey Feldman did that whole thing about like a deranged person stabbing him in his car, and then it was like,
it was all made up.
All just made up. And then he tried to prove it by showing his wound on it, and it's just like this little dot, and he's trying to say that he was stabbed. Yeah, like what was like his car stopped in traffic, and somebody like lunged and like, I don't know, opened the door and stabbed him. And I don't know. And then they showed a picture of himself in a hospital bed. Like, I mean, I get
that's someone who's starved for attention.
Yeah, and I get that he grew up kind of warped because he was needed to have attention, and he's the best example maybe you can give recently of a child star just not making it as an adult and not knowing how to let go of that life and move on and do other things because he needs the fame and all the embarrassing, shitty things he's done in the last bunch of years. And I don't dislike the guy, but I can't like him because he does and says such stupid things.
He was a little shit back when he was a child actor too, though. I mean,
I bet he was.
Like there's plenty of stories out there. Like Peter Bracky's told us some of them, but
Oh man,
the people that work with Corey Feldman back then, like they all hated his guts.
yeah, spoiled and entitled, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Because he was doing Friday the 13th Part 4 at the same time he was doing Gremlins, I think.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
was that after Goonies? So he was like huge at that point.
That was before Goonies. Those were both 84.
Okay, before Goonies and before Stand By Me too, right?
Yeah. What's funny is like I mean, sure he's in Gremlins, but he's not important. He's just there.
Right.
I'm gonna watch that in the next few days. That's one of my. That's become. It's funny. That's become more of a new holiday tradition for me in a way. I mean, I've always watched Gremlins and been aware of it, but I went many years where I didn't really associate it with Christmas or anything. But in the last couple of years, I'm like, yeah, it's a good Christmas movie. I'm gonna watch it. So that's a bit newer for me. Although I remember Gremlins really well, and I think I told you it's one of Gremlins is also even before I saw the movie fully. It was one I was aware of because I had one of those record books, where you read the book and it shows pictures and you play the record, and that's one of the ones I have. I've got that also from '84. I also have Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Yeah, I've got several.
That was a huge movie. Like it was a lot of marketing and product stuff that went along with that film.
Gremlins?
So it was PG-13, right?
Yeah, both those movies were the reason PG-13 was introduced. They both came out in the same year, and they both were, a little stronger than PG. And basically, Spielberg was frustrated with what they were telling him, and it was sort of his idea to have like something in between PG and R. But yeah, those are the two movies responsible for it.
How powerful he was.
Yeah.
He basically created that rating.
Yeah.
For himself.
Yeah. Super powerful. It's like when they were making Who Framed Roger Rabbit in '88. Like the main reason they had like access to so many of those characters is because of the respect and power that he wielded. Like they didn't pay anybody anything. He just asked them. He said, "Can we borrow them for these movies? Not have to pay you royalties." And they were like, "Yeah, because you're Steven Spielberg. We'll do you solid." So yeah, so you would think this is a movie. It's full of like different properties owned by different people. It's going to be a licensing nightmare. But he just cut through all that by being Steven Spielberg and saying, "Hey, can we use these?" Sure. And I mean, luckily, it's a really great movie. But I'm really glad they never made a sequel to that. Just not
Which
everything. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh,
like
yeah.
I'm a big fan of it, but you would never want to see a sequel. Like just let it be. It's a really good movie. Does not need any sequels or anything done to it.
Yeah, they had to have talked about it because whenever anything was successful, sequels coming.
And it was a big success, and I know I've managed to put this into lots of episodes you talk about, but it was another part of the whole Disney Renaissance thing. It was a major part of it in the late '80s. But I always loved Gremlins for the Christmas stuff going on in it, because that whole town is so like frozen over. It's great.
Yeah.
Reminds me of being a kid when we actually used to get snow. There's like no snow here. We had some flurries blowing around, but nothing. Ironically, I think there's snow back in Halifax, but there's none here. It sucks.
At least you don't have to shovel it.
That's true, because that's usually a tradition of me coming here too, is shoveling for my parents. And I mean, I don't want a blizzard. I don't have to dig feet out of it. I just want enough to cover the ground. Because shoveling. There's no good spin you can put on shoveling. Shoveling is not fun. Yeah, I've seen that clip.
That's hilarious. That on the Burbs, right?
Yeah, I've seen that clip where it's like, "Hey, we're trying to fucking act here" or something like that. I don't know. I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
It's perfect.
I don't know. I don't think I would like Dick Miller any more personally than I like Corey Feldman. I get that vibe from him, but I mean, I certainly respect his career and stuff. But I think he was probably just as big a prick, maybe in different ways.
He's definitely had that angry grandpa vibe for like a long time. I know he just passed away not too long ago.
It's funny to see those two collide,
Yeah. He's like, I forget what Corey Feldman's like, singing a song or dancing or something.
Yeah. He just says something, "Hey, kid, like we're trying to fucking act here" or something like that.
We're working here.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
It's even better because it is a kid. Like he's not doing it to a person. Like he's yelling at, even though they're all actors and they're supposed to be professionals. It still is a kid, and he just pulls no punches. But great career by Dick Miller. But I can't say I'm exactly a fan.
So I wonder if Joe Dante, like, obviously he chose Dick Miller to be in there. I think Dick Miller's been in most of Joe Dante's films.
Hadn't thought about it, but that's true.
Corey Feldman was in Gremlins, so I wonder if he just getting him back for old time's sake.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's how they.
That's what, about a decade after?
After which one?
After Gremlins.
Oh, The Burbs?
Yeah.
It's only a few years later, isn't it? It's about 5 years later.
89. God, he looks so much older though. Like Corey Feldman's like a teenager in that film.
Yeah. Well,
I guess he was probably older than he looked in Gremlins.
Yeah. But I mean, kids grow up pretty fast in those years, right? So
yeah,
when you're 13 and when you're like 17, so those years were very formative for him. But Joe Dante do anything
5
now?
years later, that's crazy.
Yeah. Does Joe Dante do anything now?
He did a movie called The Hole maybe 10 years ago. Maybe the last thing I've seen of his.
I always forget he did The Howling.
It's
a decent movie.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it before. Like, you can count the number of good werewolf movies on one hand because it's just not good. And that stands out as one of the better ones, even though it's not great or anything. But just shows how thin the genre is. Oh, yeah, The Hole, 2009.
Looks like he's doing a lot of TV stuff.
Yeah.
TV directing.
I've never seen The Burbs. I've tried to watch it a few times, but not been interested. I know a lot of people really like it, but I guess I didn't get to those parts. He did one of the weirdest movies too. If you want to compare like Home Alone and this movie, he did Small Soldiers.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about a movie not knowing what to do with itself and having no idea what the tone is, Small Soldiers is a great example. Like, I have no idea who that movie's for. Like, in the marketing, you think it's for kids, but if you I didn't watch that movie. I mean, I wasn't a little kid, but I was, I'm sort of a kid. I was about 14, 15 when I saw it. Like, I just don't know who that movie's for. That movie's all over the place. Because at this point, we've already seen Toys. We've already seen Toy Story. And now Small Soldiers comes out, and I just do not know what to make of it. It's Phil Hartman's best ever film.
Oh, is it? Wow. I've tried to watch it a few times, and I've never gotten very far.
It's just, I don't know, off-putting weirdness is how I describe it. Dick Miller is in that, of course, because it's a Joe Dante.
Yeah. In The Hole, also. He's like the pizza man or something.
Throw him a bone. You be the pizza guy. So yeah, Joe Dante is another one of those guys that, I mean, I don't want to, like, complain or anything because nobody can be great forever. But, he seems to have a really promising start and then doesn't maintain it. But you can say that for so many people. Like, I'm not going to pick on him and be like, what was his problem? Like, sometimes people can only make a few good movies before.
Well, he made a bunch of good films, though, in the 80s. Like,
well, that's what I mean. Like
Gremlins, Inner Space, The Burbs, I think is good. Howling,
yeah. And Gremlins 2 is kind of an underrated sequel. Most people either haven't seen it or just don't remember it. Because Gremlins, as wacky as Gremlins is, for Gremlins 2, they're like, fuck it, let's just go fully wacky and just go nuts here. And I kind of appreciate that. Like, Gremlins 2 is just wall-to-wall chaos.
I think that's the only way you could have done it and it been successful.
Mm-hmm. What the heck is Matinee?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, John Goodman. Takes place during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
You know what the poster reminds me of? It's funny that it's also and it's interesting too that you just said it's a period piece. It reminds me of 1941.
Oh.
movie we covered for this, which it takes place around Christmas, although it wasn't really a Christmas movie.
Did you watch that Key and Peele skit on Gremlins 2?
No, I'm not. I'm going to. I think you mentioned it
You may
before.
not be able to watch it in Canada, but
I can probably find it
it did work.
somewhere. Maybe not on
Yeah,
the site, but I bet you I can find it somewhere.
it's pretty funny.
So let's see here. I figured I hadn't heard of Matinee because it flopped, but it seems to have done okay, and it was well received by critics.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that I don't remember it at all. Like nothing.
Talks about a lot of B movies at the time, like giant bug movies and stuff.
Yeah, I
like
see that. I'm on the thing here, and there's a whole list of films that are them, Deadly Mantis, The Black Scorpion. The only one of those I've seen is, well, besides The Fly, is Them. I've seen Them, the one about the giant ants.
I've seen a few of them. When I was a very young child, I like stuff like that. It's not really something I'm that big of a fan of.
Yeah. It's funny, not too long ago, they had that big, great box set for Godzilla. And it seems cool, but I don't know how much I'd actually enjoy it. Those movies become so repetitive after a while.
Yeah. And they made a lot of really bad ones. Like the first film is like a true piece of, cinema. But
and I have to say,
really
I think people keep overestimating how popular Godzilla is outside of Japan, because they keep trying to make it seem like there's a ton of people here that love those movies, but there's not, because they don't do well. There's another one coming up, and I bet you it's not going to do well.
You mean the new films?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever since 98. They made an American one in 98, then they did one in 2014, and now they're doing this one as sort of a do-over to that, and they can even say, this is going to be the real Godzilla. It doesn't matter, because there's not enough of those fans here.
They're more than you think.
I don't know.
A good friend of mine is a huge Godzilla fan, and he goes to the convention every year. It was in Chicago this year, G-Fest. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I guess so.
They get a lot of the Japanese people come to it.
I'm sure
we've met.
Plus, the films really should be kept Japanese, I think, because everything about them speaks to their history and culture, and really trying to transfer those meanings and metaphors and stuff into a film for the American audience or everyone, I don't think works well. I think of it as sort of a distinctly Japanese thing. That
I want to like those films more than I do. It's
same,
just not
same
my
here.
thing.
I mean, I've seen a handful of them. I kind of like the
newer ones.
I really
the second one I think was better than the first one, the first remake.
Well, I mean,
everybody 98. I'm talking about the one from a few years ago.
Yeah, I really hated the 2014 one.
Yeah.
So bland.
Again, it's one of those things you want to like, but
yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. There's already been another one since. So this will be the third one. This will be the third one. Yeah, they already did.
One. They're fast tracking King Kong versus Godzilla, I think, for the next movie.
Where suddenly King Kong is big enough to be a match for him.
Yeah.
I don't care, because these movies, how much logic do you want out of them?
Well, he's on the island where he keeps growing, so.
Yeah, fair enough.
Skull Island. That was a good film, I thought. Skull Island. I liked it better than any of the Godzilla films.
Yeah. I'm just reading a bit more on the Minitel article. Some interesting things jumping out. Again, this was written in 2012. Today, as switch-off approaches, debate rages in France about Minitel's legacy, and whether in retrospect it's proved more of an embarrassment than a mark of pride. What was once shiny and new now looks like a shoddy bad investment, of interest to the retro market, but not to anyone else. One thing that's very telling is that Minitel was a uniquely French institution. Never made it abroad, apart from Belgium. Some stuff. I remember when I joined in 1990. Okay, I think this is an American talking. I joined in 1990. It all felt very extremely funky. My friends were all very impressed that I was bringing this new sexy piece of French kit. But there were so many problems. They're selling terminals, not giving them away. That was a huge handicap. Oh, well, there's a big... Yeah, I was going to say, one of the main reasons I think it was so successful is because it was provided free. Nobody had to pay anything for it. If you owned a phone and paid a phone bill, you got this in your house, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it sounds very interesting. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a thing on that explained it in a little better technical detail than I did earlier on, but now I can't remember what that was. But oh well. Oh well. But it plays there's not too many movies where it stands out, but it plays an important role here because it's how our villain finds our hero, basically, and sort of shows the dangers of. It's almost like a prophesizing years later, like the dangers of like meeting predators in chat rooms and stuff, almost, which they make movies about all the time now. They'll often make movies about people meeting like, I don't know, rapists and murderers and stuff on there.
Like Dateline type stuff.
Yeah, it's like a movie of the week all the time. You see,
They do a lot of foreshadowing in this film to explain a lot of things that happen later on. Like, at the end, you're like, holy shit, this kid can drive a car pretty well.
Yeah, where they show him like working on the car.
He's driving it around. And
he's clearly some sort of like prodigy, really. Because he's so tech savvy and he knows how to do all this stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of great tension in the movie too. I think some of it's a little hokey. They go a little overboard in slow motion in some of the places. Yeah. And there's a few times where they're trying to like make things seem a little more tense by moving by the way they move the camera. Like when he gets in the car with his grandfather and the car won't start, and the Santa starts attacking you with the sledgehammer. They just use all these weird angles, and I don't really think it works. It doesn't look very good. But most of the movie does look good. And this has nothing to do with anything. This is just my own weird taste. But there's a lot of movies from like the late 80s into early 90s. It has nothing to do with the movies themselves. It's that I don't like that aesthetic. And I've never liked it. The way the people dressed, the way the cars looked, the way home decor looked, I find it all very ugly. And so there's some very good movies made from that time that I like as movies, but I still find them kind of annoying to look at. And
what year is that again? What time period?
Like the late 80s, early 90s. Like especially like 1990.
We're talking like Hypercolor.
It's like when the 80s was merging into the 90s, and no decade dies out completely, and we hadn't had a complete 90s. Yeah. So we just had these couple muddled years in the middle. Yeah, there's a lot of like that neon and stuff going on too, and a lot of those really.
Love that period of time.
Like you look at like even in Home Alone, like you look at his brother Buzz. Buzz is wearing like these really ugly, before the concept of ugly Christmas sweaters existed. He's wearing these really ugly sweaters. He's got this weird Buzz haircut. Like he looks ridiculous, and his sisters all have like weird cheap plastic earrings and stuff on. And I want to stress for people who don't know, but you probably do know, that I don't usually even notice these types of things. I'm not a type of person that is like cares about fashion or cars and stuff. I'm just saying, for whatever reason, it's just a few years, the end of the 80s, start of the 90s, where everything, and all the cars are very still blocky from the 80s.
Yeah.
And a lot of the home decor is ugly. Like, I mean, like Christmas Vacation was 89, and a lot of that is really ugly to look at for me. It doesn't take me out of the movie.
House is perfect for that time period.
Yeah, like yuppies trying to look futuristic and modern. Yeah,
exactly.
I think when they come back from like their weird jog and they're wearing like weird silver jumpsuits or something.
Yeah.
You want to talk about somebody that doesn't age? You don't see too many women that age better than Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Man, she's aged fantastically. You see her in that movie, and she doesn't even look that different from a few years ago. She's interesting because she was rich before she did anything. She came from a rich family. But anyway, that's not criticism. That's simply the times. That's not me picking on the art director or anybody. That's simply the times. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of movies from, just the end of the 80s, start of the 90s, where I find things look really ugly. And this movie kind of dodges around that. I don't know if it's because it's France or whatever, but I didn't really have a problem with how anything looked in this movie.
I can't believe we've gone this long and haven't mentioned his mullet.
Yeah, you're right.
He's got a pretty glorious
If we are going to talk about hairstyles, yes, he's got the mullet, which is obviously sort of an action movie reference, I'd assume. But yes, it is kind of jarring to see a kid who's like 9 with a mullet.
Yeah,
and it's very glorious mullet. It's pretty interesting too, because like early on when they're introducing him, they show him like doing some pumping iron or something, and then there's a really good close up to show how awesome his mullet is. Like this.
That was weird to me. Him working out, like it felt a little homoerotic, but
Yeah.
I guess that's just because it's French.
But it's also in line with those movies. Think of how homoerotic like Rambo and stuff was, like
Yeah.
with the oiled up muscles and stuff, right? I think it was just
It's
sort of a
not-
nod to that. Of course, the joke is it's not a big muscular dude; it's a kid. So yeah, you can say, well,
Yeah.
that's kind of weird and uncomfortable, but it's only for a couple seconds. It's not like they're roving the camera around his body or anything. It's not too bad. But you're right; it's a bit awkward. But I think that's what they're going for. Again, they're just showing like what those '80s action guys kind of were like.
Right.
The '80s were pretty gay in general.
Very.
Hair metal bands and
That's part of the charm.
And the wrestling. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the wrestling. I mean, does it get any gayer than wrestling? I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
speaking of Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I was like what Seinfeld said about it. It's like, okay, we'll take these two huge guys and we'll put them in tiny bathing suits and we'll get them to pretend to fight.
we'll oil them up and then we'll hug each other.
It'll be gold. People will love it, and they do. People go nuts. And to each his own. I'm not going to say, "Oh, you dumb wrestling fans." I don't. I like stuff. You like stuff. Fine. But
Yeah.
even as a child, I was not into it.
I'm just saying. I mean, you want to be macho, but you're watching guys and speedos.
Has there been any openly gay wrestlers yet?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are some, but
yeah. Because
that's another environment that's like hyper masculine, hyper heterosexual.
I know, and that it all gets torn down when you find out like how many like gay guys might have been part of it or something. It's kind of like, speaking of the bands, like how it might have shattered some people's worlds when they found out that what's his name, Rob Hetfield, the guy from Judas Priest, when they found out he was gay. Like he was gay. It's like he wasn't hiding it. He's in his tight leather biker outfits and stuff like that, and he's singing in a very sort of flighty, feminine style voice, and yet it shattered so many guys' worlds because they thought like he's gay.
Yeah,
like, yeah, he is. But I mean, that was
it's like nobody, Freddie Mercury, sure.
Yeah, Freddie Mercury, sure. And I mean, it's not like there weren't hints like Turbo Lover.
So, there's plenty of hints.
Yeah,
I've never been the biggest.
Me neither.
Fan, but
I mean, to that community's credit, from what I know, obviously there was some negative response. It was mostly fine. Like even though it was a hyper masculine environment, metal and stuff, like most of the fans, they didn't let it bother them. They were like, okay, cool, he's gay, and they moved on, which is pretty cool because sometimes you think, oh no, they're all gonna flip out and turn on him, but no, they realized what was important. He's still the same guy. He's still the same guy we liked. Great music,
right?
So
and he could be himself.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Why hide something?
For sure.
Something where if that came out from the beginning, maybe they wouldn't have been as successful as they were.
No, definitely not.
I don't think it was exactly something you could, advertise.
No. And plus they were from like a really hardcore, like industrial British town where that was
like imagine if like John Lennon comes out as gay, like a year into the Beatles. Like would that,
I don't know. There would have been like riots in the streets, I think.
That was the whole thing, right? They were like sex symbols,
right?
Like in the very beginning.
I mean, speaking of John Lennon, right? He got married, and they had to hide that. He was married before he married Yoko Ono. He was married during the Beatles height of Beatles popularity, and he even had a son with her. That's Julian Lennon, and then later with Yoko, he had Sean Lennon.
So I guess it was just to make him
available. Yeah, and they did it all the time with pop stars in the 60s, and they did that with Jackie Chan.
Okay.
Jackie Chan was such a, he wasn't just a star, but women loved him. And it was no exaggeration to say that some women would have killed themselves if they found out he'd been married. I don't think he's married now, but he was married at least once or twice. I feel bad for Jackie Chan, but maybe some of it's he brought on his own. I know he's got a daughter who has no relationship with him and wants nothing to do with him. It's a little sad.
That sucks.
She's gay. She's a lesbian.
Oh.
And I don't know if he has a problem with that or not. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, because he's towed the line in a lot of sort of conservative Chinese type stuff, right? He's supported the government here and there and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know. But then again, he's an actor. You think I have no idea. So it is a little bit of a sad situation.
What are the situation with homosexuality in China? What is that like?
It's like they pretend it doesn't exist, kind of thing.
Kind of like the way the Western world was like 50 years ago.
Yeah. Like it's less about like overt hatred and blah blah blah, and just sort of pretending it's not a thing is kind of what I get from it. As far as I know.
I just know like you could still be like, stoned to death for it in some parts of the world.
Yeah, it's not like that in China. It's not like the troopers are going to bust into your house and put a black bag over your head. But it's just more kind of like, society doesn't recognize that you exist or anything like that type thing. And obviously, since the government controls everything, that seeps its way into TV and stuff too. So it's not like anybody can really do or say much. I think Korea, of those Asian countries, is like sort of the most forward thinking about like. I think of those countries, homosexuality is a lot more accepted in a place like Korea. I think they have like gay celebrities and stuff.
They're very online with the West, I think.
But they still do have their issues. Like the other thing that shows up on Twitter all the time is that you have all these K-pop stars, right? And you have the weird thing about you have these K-pop stars, these young girls that are in like their early 20s, and very much of it is them being sexualized, right? And yet they're supposed to retain these personas that makes them seem very pure, and they get criticized for shit all the time that would nobody even bat an eye at over here and stuff. It's like you could see her bra. Like she went out for dinner the other night, and you could see her bra through her shirt. Like huge uproar, like stuff like that.
I don't want to say anything negative towards K-pop because I know
because their fans are
rabid fan base,
and they'll crush you. Yeah.
Yes, they will crush you.
Yeah,
we're huge fans of K-pop here on the Baca Dimension.
Yeah,
we love it.
I lean a bit more towards the J-pop, but I recognize that K-pop is the superior form for sure. And there was one girl, she was only like 25. She killed herself not too long ago because of the pressures of it.
I know.
Like, so sad.
No, it's really unfortunate the way they treat them, too. It's like they're not making the money that they're, producing.
No.
Like, it's not going to them.
And they spit that out a few years later when they get too old, right?
Yeah.
I've talked about this before. I can't find it anymore, but years ago, when I had the American version of Netflix, besides Canadian, I watched a Korean horror film called White, which was about a K-pop group that gets haunted by a song. And it really has some commentary about what that's life is like. Because one of them, the main one that goes solo and takes on the white persona, the whole thing is like she's the oldest of the group. She's like 26 or something. And they're about to force her out anyway for being too old and stuff. Like, and they also show like just how like hard their schedules are and how they make them always practice and stuff. And this was like mid-2000s. This was like 2006-ish. And it's only gotten more intense over the last few years as K-pop is not just K-pop was always a big thing, but now it's a global thing, right? Now, like there's, because I mean,
I'd really love to.
Yeah.
Oh, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was never huge into J-pop, but I liked a lot. I was introduced to it through video games and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So like you could only talk to certain people that it was on their radar, but now like K-pop is way beyond that. Like it's just part of the mainstream, pretty much. But yeah, I'll often see people like having arguments on Twitter. They'll have like is over parties. It's like some pop star I've never heard of is over party, and then people are like, they're not really over. This is something done by K-pop stan. Stan means fan or something like that. I think stan means fan, some kind of fan or something like that. And then you get in massive arguments with each other, and it's ridiculous, and I don't understand it. So Korea, Korea doesn't have some of the problems of like a China. They do have their own still societal problems, for sure.
Well, everyone does.
Everyone's got their societal problems and issues. And
I've been trying to decide if I'd rather visit there or Tokyo more, even though I'll probably never get to do either.
Yeah, Seoul and Tokyo are both crazy cities. Yeah,
at some point. I've never even been to New York City, so.
Yeah, I was in New York a few years ago. It was fun. I think you'd be like me. It was really fun to visit, but I was actually kind of glad to leave. A week was as much as I wanted. Like, I got a week of it, and I was like, that's good. There were only a few things I missed, and some of them were just really touristy I'm not interested in. Like, I didn't want to go to the Statue of Liberty. I don't give a shit. I kind of saw it from a distance, and that was good enough. You know, we mostly stayed in, like, a radius of a few blocks, but that got me kind of everything I wanted. I mean, there were a few things, sure, that would have been good to see that I didn't get to, but yeah, I was there for just about a week, and it was good. It was enough. The one thing I thought was I was there in November, and the first few days were really warm for November, and then it finally got colder. But all I could think for in those first few days was like, how much does this city stink in the summer? Because all things like it was fairly mild in November, and I thought some places really kind of stunk, and where you could see stuff coming up from the sewer and stuff. I'm thinking, what is this place like in like July and August?
Yeah, man, when the trash piles up on the streets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, my New York trip was a really good experience. It was really good. And the thing that maybe surprised me the most is just how nice everybody was. And again, maybe it wasn't the real New York, but the place I was in, and I think it has a lot to do with the employers too, because they know like 90% of the people they're dealing with are like tourists from other places. And I'm pretty sure like when they get hired, their bosses always tell them to like be nice, because everybody was super nice.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Kind of contrary to what, popular, I guess,
well, again,
pop culture opinions.
Well, I wasn't over in Queens. I wasn't in the Bronx, so maybe that's different.
Yeah.
I was in, the really Manhattan-y, touristy part of Manhattan.
I've been to D.C. a couple times, and that place is a shithole.
I was in D.C. with my parents when I was 12. That was part of our Virginia trip, and we were in D.C. for a few days. D.C., I don't know. It's pretty boring for a kid.
Well, if you had gone to the Smithsonian, I don't know, did you go to the Smithsonian?
Yeah, we went to a few. I mean, that was probably the highlight. We didn't go to all of them. There's several ones, right? But we went to a couple of them.
Oh, I know.
The Air and Space Museum, of course. I touched the moon rock.
You could spend a week at the Smithsonian.
Oh, they're
huge.
So
awesome.
They're huge, yeah. So, that was definitely the best part, was the Smithsonian. Saw, the pop culture stuff. Saw Fonzie's jacket. Fonzie's jacket, Archie Bunker's chair, the ruby slivers.
Other than that, it's like, okay, there's the Vietnam Memorial, there's the Washington Monument, there's the White House.
Yeah, so all right, let's go. Kind of my cool Washington moment was I don't remember where we were, but we weren't too far from the White House or the Capitol, and they have a lot of like little park areas, right? Like just like walking paths and stuff. So just in the middle, and we were on the edge of one of those. And I wasn't alone, of course. I was a kid, but my parents and sister were over somewhere, so I was a bit far from them. Anyway, there was a gazebo. It was a white gazebo that I approached. But the difference about this gazebo was it wasn't open the way most gazebos are open. It had like windows with blinds like down drawn. And I was like, what the hell is this? It's like a gazebo, but it has like windows and a door. It's closed off. And it was blinds down on all sides except one part. The blinds were up just a bit. And inside was like an office. And it had like TV screens all over the place. I'm thinking, wow, this is like some sort of Secret Service bunker shit, like where they're like monitoring the city. It was like a Secret Service base.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool that I managed to see that.
Yeah,
I mean, what else would it be? Why else would you have a gazebo that has like a bunch of monitors in it? It has to be some sort of like security thing, right? This was pre 9/11, but there was still, security. Right. It's still DC.
We went in 91.
I was there in summer of 96.
I got to see my first prostitute. I mean, I got to view the person.
Tell you something in a second.
Then, I basically learned what that is. And we watched Silence of the Lambs on it was probably like Spectravision or some sort of weird on-demand thing.
Oh yeah.
But, it was a huge popular movie. My brother and sister are much older than I am, so
yeah,
they were like in their 20s when I was like 11. So
wow.
So we
I was in DC.
It was like our last family trip.
Mm-hmm.
Like the last one we took before they got married and had kids and stuff.
But it's funny, the prostitute thing. So I think I've mentioned this trip a few times. When I was in grade 9 at Malcolm, because of French immersion, there's two trips. There's a band trip and there's the French immersion trip, and I was spoiled and I got to go on both. and I think I said this before, like the French trip is always to Quebec City because it's for French, but the band trip was supposed to be to Burlington, Vermont, where this classic festival was going to be held. But it was the year '98. It was the year of this crazy ice storm that hit a lot of Quebec and Ontario, just ruined the place. Because like nothing's more devastating, at least winter weather, than an ice storm. Way worse than snow. Everything's just turned to glass. Everything, power lines come down. Everything crashes. And I guess because of that, the bands in the Quebec City area, I don't know, they couldn't leave or something. Maybe they had to spend their money elsewhere. Anyway, so the whole point was now the Classics Festival was being relocated to Quebec City to help them out. And everybody I knew was like, what? Because some of us, we were already going to Quebec for the French trip. It's like, but it turned out we got to go to Burlington anyway. And then we came back because we had the trip planned out then we came back up to Quebec. So anyway, this is after we'd already been to Burlington in Vermont, which was a very nice, clean little place. And we saw some stuff. We played at a mall there for some reason. And we saw a little theater production of The Wizard of Oz, which was pretty cool, pretty nice. They put some like modern jokes. There was like a Lion King joke in there and stuff like that. Anyway, it's fine. Anyway, when we came back to Quebec, we'd already spent days on this bus, of course. And on this bus, we watched Scream, and we also watched Grease, because this was the 20th anniversary of Grease, and it was a really big deal that year, '98. At least for people of a certain age. And I don't know, all the girls seemed to be into it, and the girls insisted we watch Grease. But anyway, so this is after we tapped out everything. We just been traveling on this bus a few days, and we finally got into the hotel we were going to stay at in Quebec, and everybody was just like wasted, and it was already dark. We've been going for I don't know how many hours and hours and hours. And we were right up to like the hotel, which was a little bit kind of outside the city, and the hotel had like some grassy area, like just with pavement around it. Like the hotel's like back here, and it's way out front, and then you drive in sort of a long driveway and into the hotel. But out on the road, there are these two women, I guess, that must have been prostitutes, but they weren't on my side of the bus. We were just all sitting there. But then this girl, I remember who it was Sarah Bryden. Sarah Bryden, looking out the window, goes, "Prostitutes!" And everybody from my side of the bus rushed over, and we were all on the side bus, pressing our faces up against the thing to look at these poor, beleaguered women who were obviously prostitutes on the beat. And they got to have a whole bus full of junior high kids stare at them, which must have been a really great moment for their dignity.
Sure. Yeah. Life decisions.
Yeah.
Going good.
And they definitely were.
Yeah, the last
time and standing there, but
the last time I went to DC was 2010, and we were staying in a really nice hotel. It was I was having a convention for work. It was the only reason I was there. But I'm trying to think of the name of the place. But anyway, it was a nice hotel, and these two show up, right? And it's so obvious, like they've got huge like hooker heels, like I don't know what size those are, but
what do they show up because they see conventions and like convention?
Yeah.
Get some
horny I think they were already booked, like they were going to meet their people, their Johns or whatever. But
I love how that's like a big part of like the corporate world. If you're like some dude,
it
is like, I'm going to the convention, gonna get a hook.
Yeah.
I see that all the time on TV, but I remember they did that Office episode where they went to Canada and Michael thought that the hotel provided hookers. And he thought the concierge was the Canadian equivalent of a geisha. It's really funny.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I probably told you this before, but the hotel I stayed at in New York was the same hotel that they shot Made in Manhattan in.
Oh yeah. Is that the Ritz-Carlton?
I can't remember its name. It's not the Ritz-Carlton. It wasn't. It's a smaller hotel than that. I mean, it was a nice hotel, but it wasn't like one of the really big ones. It was only maybe 6 or 7 floors. It wasn't huge. It was very nice though. It was kind of retro and old fashioned. It was a really good place. But I mean, I saw the Plaza, like which of course is where Kevin stays in Home Alone 2. I haven't partook in many years, but yes. If there's a question about the pot situation in Halifax, I guess it was fine back when I used to do it, but that's quite a few years ago. I wouldn't even know how to get any now. That's part of the reason. Like, I don't even know who to talk to anymore. Like, I don't know anybody anymore. So
they're not like dispensaries or whatever they call them?
Oh, yeah, I guess, yeah, okay. So, yes, I could get it legally. You're right. I don't know. I've never got it legally since they did all that. No, I haven't. I have not checked that out. But that's true. And I guess I could have even before it became law because I have an anxiety disorder, and I know they'll give you like medical marijuana like that, but I never sucked. But yeah, there's a place not too far from me. It's funny. It's called what's it called?
Oh, you've told me before.
It's called something Access. I can't. Access is in the
like it's a stupid name, isn't it?
Yeah, Access is in the title anyway. And what's funny too is that it has like a little blurb, which I guess is like its slogan, and it's "Let's talk solutions." Like, what the hell does that even mean? But anyway, yeah, it's something Access. It's pretty close to where I live.
It always has to be so corny, like wacky tobacco or some stupid shit.
Yeah.
Like
this one's going the other way. Like this one's going for like the whole. This one's going for the whole like legit medical type thing. Yeah,
that's cool. I mean,
not that there aren't like stores around here that cater to that kind of stuff. Like there was always this place, like a smoke shop place, full of bongs, like wizard bongs and shit like that, right? There's a place where I used to. There was a place where I used to buy hair dye when I would dye my hair like red and blue and stuff, and it's all full of that shit. All full of like stoner stuff. I might as well just call it Stoner's World, because that's pretty much all.
That's all legal now, right?
Yeah, just not. Yeah, you just but you still can't do it in public. You can still get in trouble for doing it in public, but yeah, in the privacy of your home, fine.
It's kind of an odd thing to like focus on, like I mean, who cares really?
What's weird is like every place I've ever lived, of course, there have been people that have done marijuana in the buildings and stuff like that. And you always smell it here and there. But what's funny is in my building, every once in a while, even to like as recently as a few months ago, I don't know what my building's policy is on it, but I got a notice under my door. It had nothing to do with me, but I guess they couldn't pinpoint it, like saying like, we need you to stop smoking the drugs in your apartment. And obviously, I don't know. I was like, well, why? Isn't it like completely legal now? So I don't know what my building's problem is with it, but yeah, I guess they can.
But if you can't smoke it in public, where can you smoke it?
Well, I assume that's what I mean. Like, I didn't realize that a building could still have a policy where they can still like evict you for it, even though. And I'm like, why would you even? It's not against law. Although, I mean, maybe it's just because they want to discourage people from smoking. Period. Because I don't think you're supposed to smoke inside the building. Period. So maybe that's why.
What I was going to say. Maybe it's like a non-smoking building.
Yeah, I think it's just because of that. But they did make the distinction about drugs, not like cigarettes. So I have no idea what the hell that they mean by that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Every once in a while, I say I'll go down and go in and see what's what. I haven't really done that, like go into the store and poke around. I guess I should just to see what it's like.
I would be first in line. I can tell you that right
now. I just don't miss it very much. I thought I would. I just don't. I think it's because I mean it's weird though, because I think I would like it more now because I could just do it alone. Because I think one of the main reasons it used to bother me was because I used to have to associate with people I didn't like, or people I hung out with would get annoying. But you're right. Now I'm in a good situation where I can just buy some, bring it home, and that's that. So it's something to think about, I suppose.
I mean, one of the main reasons I had to stop was just the paranoia of getting caught all the time. It was getting to me, like emotionally. Like,
yeah, I don't think Canada ever policed it quite the way the U.S. does.
Oh man, it was.
We certainly don't have. Even when it was illegal here, we never had the harsh penalties that the U.S. has. Like nobody here is doing like 15 years for marijuana, like they could do in parts of the U.S.
Well, I mean, I'm multiple offenses, and if you're talking like,
well, that's the other thing. They have that 3 strikes law, where it wouldn't matter what your third strike was. They could be like super light. Like we don't have that.
I know first offense, I don't know if it's changed or anything, but it's like, misdemeanor under like so many grams or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's still like you lose your driver's license for a year.
Yeah. Because it's interesting you say that though, because I mean, it's not like I did much of it, but even when I wasn't doing it, I knew lots of people that were really into it, right? And I never heard a story from any of them having anything to do with the cops. Ever.
That's good. Well, I think Canada's always had the reputation of being a little more lenient on that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Which, is good. It's really a stupid thing to be criminalized anyway. I mean, it's...
oh, yeah.
Sure. It's, I'm sure you've seen all the histories on. It was really like a racist thing to begin with. Like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, Nixon basically said that. It's on one of the tapes where Nixon just said, we needed a way to like stop these black bastards, and this was a good excuse.
I mean, racist against Hispanics and
Oh,
stuff too.
them too, for sure. Yeah, of course. But crap, what was I
Smoking those jive cigarettes.
Yeah. I mean, Nova Scotia still has its drug issues, like the illegal kind. There's actually even here in Cape Breton, there's a thing about what are they called? Amphetamines or something like that.
Not meth.
Yeah, some sort of like derivative of meth, like in that family.
Oh, really? So it's something else.
Yeah, it's in that family. It's related because like it's funny, for so many years my mother was so involved in our church, and I think I told you that our church closed and we moved to a new church, which she didn't like as much. We don't like as much, but she stayed involved. And then for years we had this minister that my mother and so many people couldn't stand until she finally left because they basically ousted her because she was so terrible. And one of the things, even though she wasn't a horrible person, but she was very difficult to work with, and she was very bitchy and confrontational and stuff. But another part of her that was kind of annoying was, well, she wanted the church to do good things for the community. She also kind of wanted it because she wanted the ink for it. She wanted like press and stuff. She wanted everybody to see like how great her church was doing and helping the community. So in some ways it made her like go overboard in it, in that like there was a part where like, I don't know, they'd have outreach to people like drug addicts and stuff like that, and that was fine, and they'd have like little meetings and stuff. But she would like leave stuff like around, and I don't know, they stole like computers and stuff because she was too dumb to lock them up, even though people told her to lock them up. Because she's trying, she's always trying to say, oh, like these are people, like human beings, you have to treat them with dignity. Yes, we do, but they're drug users and they'll steal anything that's not nailed down for money, and you're an idiot for not that. So that was one of the issues before my mom stopped doing stuff there as much. Now she does the community kitchen, which is with another church. Really busy with.
I'm trying to remember. Bizow told me they were having a big problem with a certain drug. It may have been heroin is like making a big comeback.
Heroin's making a big comeback in the Midwest. It might be spreading now. I remember seeing a story a few years ago, like in Ohio, it was becoming like a huge deal. Again in Ohio, like people were like ODing all over the place, and it was like a big deal. Like it was like the early '90s again.
Well, I think it's probably because they're cracking down on opioids.
Yeah.
And they're not handing out these drugs that they used to just give people and basically turn a bunch of people into addicts.
Yeah.
So now they're having to go to another source to get their high or whatever.
Yeah, I don't live too far from one of those like what are they called, methadone clinics.
Yeah,
there's always people hanging out
methadone.
There.
I've heard methadone is really, really hard to kick.
Yeah,
like I know they use it as an alternative to heroin, but
it's not much of a solution, really.
It's just another thing, right?
It's just like another thing.
No, not methadone. It's the other one they've got now that it basically gives you a feeling, but it doesn't have the the good high feeling that goes with it. I can't think of the terminology, but shit. Suboxone.
Oh, I don't know it. But
Suboxone. Yeah, that's what Dr. Drew was saying. That it's really, really hard to kick.
But yeah, the methadone clinic there's always people there and stuff. And I remember at one point there was a mobile one, which was kind of a good thing in its way, because there were always people protesting if there was a methadone clinic anywhere near their neighborhood. Like, why our neighborhood? So they have a mobile one, like with like an RV kind of setup or something, which is kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, I mean, they got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah. But yeah, there's a certain street that I have to go to sometimes, and that's on there. And there's always, I mean, they're not doing anything bad, but they're always, standing around outside, either waiting for them to open or waiting to, I don't know, who the hell knows. And I think I told you several of those people for years. These were women, a group of mostly women, although there was at least one man in their 50s. They thought I was a woman named Lorna, and they would always call and text me. It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear they were like some of these people, because they would like.
Yeah.
They would ask me about like pills and stuff. Once they warned me that the cops were outside, like I never answered these people. I've answered one person once, finally, after like a year of ignoring them. Said, I'm not Lorna. But yeah, that went on for over a year. They thought I was Lorna, and they'd call at stupid hours and text, and oh my god, they were annoying.
Yeah, Suboxone is contains a combination of whatever the drugs, and then 2 drugs. One is an opioid, and the other one blocks the effects of the opioid, so you don't get the feeling of pain relief or well-being.
Right, but it's still addictive.
So, yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't really seem
more addictive than the thing you're trying to get off of.
Doesn't really seem like much of a solution. Trying to look up the kid in this movie, but I guess he didn't do anything after this, which is too bad because he plays it pretty well. I mean, it's in some ways it's more demanding than like the Home Alone role, because this kid has to like show real fear and anger and sadness and desperation, like the whole thing. Like there's the part, you know, where Kevin says to himself, like when he rolls it out, like he's like, "This is my home," and they're not taking it. But this guy says it directly to him, and he's just like, he's like, "You killed my dog. You hurt me. You tried to kill my grandfather. It's like I'm coming for you. You're the one who's gonna be scared now." Like it's pretty good. He announces it over like the PA or whatever in his weird, super futuristic yet also old-fashioned house. His weird Gothic mansion. Like it's like he lives in like the X mansion or something.
Yeah.
You need a danger room scene where like Santa stumbles in. He's like, "You're in my world now." Put some sort of like virtual environment up. They could do like a sequel and do it that way. Virtual environments.
Yeah. Yeah. There was one scene I was going to mention earlier when he was supposed to be like, you know, holding on to the roof, like about to fall off.
Yeah.
That was like, it was animation, I think.
Yeah, it looked a little wonky. I wouldn't know for sure, but you have a better eye for that than I do.
But you know, I'm fine with it for what it is. You know, obviously they couldn't put the kid in danger.
Right. Yeah, not too bad. And there is some interesting stuff, like we said, about like his character, and he's got this obsession with weapons and stuff like that. But then at the end, when he actually has the gun on the Santa, you know, it kind of the reality hits him that it's not fun or cool that he's got a gun. Like he only really reluctantly shoots him, and he doesn't even hit him fatally. And it's the grandfather that finally finishes the job. And you knew they were setting that up because he can't see for shit, right? Just like shoot the red blur. The red blur is obviously Santa Claus. Just go by color.
You couldn't see shit from his perspective. Like,
I mean, if it was a super dark movie, he would have like shot the kid.
That's what I was thinking.
Shoots the kid. Roll credits.
They've already killed the dog. Hell.
Yeah. But it's still a downer note, of course, right? Like the mother comes in, he's all bloody, his dog has been killed, his innocence has been shattered, and he just says, "It's my fault, Mom. I wanted to see Santa," because he still believes it. You have to imagine, like you said, what she has to say to him after this, and the years of therapy, and all the crazy PTSD he's suffering. Like you have to wonder what effect it would have on like the stuff he likes. Would he throw away all the weapon stuff, or would it make him even more paranoid and like gather it even more?
He would get more Star of Davids to throw at people.
Yeah, that was an odd choice. I don't even know what that meant.
Yeah, very weird. A lot of his stuff he had was weird.
I also like how, like at the beginning, the Star of Davids had like they were, you know, he could throw them and they stick to things. But then in his montage, he just pulls it off and they're like sharp underneath or something. Like what? He shouldn't have had those in the first place if they're sharp.
It's like Velcro or something.
Yeah,
I guess he puts Velcro when he throws them at the dog.
I mean, he clearly loves his dog. But I have to wonder if, like, the poor dog had to go through that every day.
I know.
Every day that he gets hunted by the
falls
kid
in the net.
and thrown into a net.
Which, again, setting that up for Santa Claus.
Rest in peace, JR.
Yeah, man.
I don't know what JR stood for. They never said. Draw your own conclusion there.
Yeah, I was going to say when the mom walks in, like, you know, at the very end, she's like, "It's over. It's all over." It's like, bitch, you don't know what this kid's been through. Like, what? No. You don't know what's happened here.
And there's also a really weird part. Like, they eventually do call the cops, but the first time when she's saying, "I can't get through," and she's talking to the other guy, he goes, "Well, make it feel better. I'll call the cops." And she just says, "Don't." She tells him not to, and she doesn't come up with a convincing reason why not to. She only decides to call them later. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. But again, we can't really argue continuity on this thing.
Yeah, that's one of the things. She looked familiar.
I mean, it's one of the negatives of the film, but I mean, it is what it is. You know, it's.
I think I've seen her in something else before, but I don't recognize these titles. Her name is Brigitte Fossey.
Yeah, she does look familiar.
And she'd been in it and she'd been acting since she was a kid too. She's got credits going back to the 50s.
Wow.
I might have at least seen part of something like that. But this was towards the end of her career. She only did a couple more films in the early 90s, then didn't do anything until 2016, and was in the movie Don't Tell Her in 2017, which I've heard of. Some sort of comedy.
She probably retired to have a family or something.
Yeah, that often happens.
It's generally what female actors do.
Yeah. But in this, her role is basically, like the money-obsessed venture capitalist workaholic mom that's kind of neglecting her son, and I guess learns the lesson not to do that.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, the father must have been some, like, weird, like, free-spirited guy or something, because I guess that's where, like, because it's so, like, until you find out later about, like, that being a secret room full of toys, isn't the whole opening so weird? Like, he wakes up in, like, what is it, like a model World War II fighter. You're like, what?
So weird.
Because at first I thought, okay, this is like a dream sequence, but no, that's where he really has been sleeping. Because it's so weird. And then he goes on his weird breakfast mission where he hunts the dog, and he's got a tape full of like army sounds. And it's like, this kid is seriously disturbed.
Yeah.
But then, as the movie goes, he seems actually more rational and sane once he's actually presented with a real life problem. So, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in Home Alone, like Kevin learns the lesson. But in this movie, like the mom is supposed to learn the lesson, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, about not taking family for granted, I suppose.
Right.
Or like not leave. Yeah, or being like, this is her son's like formative years. She shouldn't just leave him to other people, right?
Well,
like, because she's not being
especially on a holiday, man.
She's not being irresponsible.
For God's sakes.
Yeah, exactly. And her staff is horrified when she's saying, "We're going to stay open this long and do this." It's kind of like almost an Ebenezer Scrooge thing, right? There's money to be made. Damn it! Screw your holidays.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I was going to mention the body count. So this guy, he kills the guy
in like the delivery truck.
Yeah, he kills that guy. Then he kills the two people,
the two caretakers.
Caretakers, yeah. And that's what Kenny was just asking. Where are the maid? Where's the maid? And they got killed.
Yeah, he kills the dog, and then he is killed.
Was that it? Okay.
I think. Oh, he kills the cop. He kills the first cop that arrives on the scene. That's how they get the gun. And he actually leaves the gun. He comes up behind the cop and kills him, but leaves the gun. And when he's chasing Thomas later, Thomas finds the gun in the mud and shoots him there. But that actually is a really good scene. Like, he's all covered in mud, and Santa's coming at him. He has the gun, and he's still reluctant to fire because he thinks it's Santa. And he's like, why? But then he does actually shoot, and you just feel so bad for this kid. Well, as I said, you want to talk about loss of innocence. Not too many movies hammer it home like this.
Yeah, I like how it keeps, like he's a strong, tough kid, but you see him break down a few times that reminds you he is still a child, which I think is nice to see. The
even early on. Well, yeah, he calls out for his mother.
Yeah, which I think is realistic.
Because it shows like he's capable of digging down and being tough, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have moments where he wants to give into his fear and everything. Because who wouldn't? And like I said, I actually really appreciate the mourning of the dog because, that's how you would really feel. It's your dog. And yet people seem to move past that so quickly in a lot of movies. Usually because once the dog dies, there's a bunch of other people die. And I realize, like, who's going to be sad for the poor caretakers? Well, I don't know. Somebody at some point.
Yeah. I think it's that we see people die in movies all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, I always kind of get pissed off when people say stuff like that. It's like, dude, we just saw like 50 people get straight up murdered, and you're like upset about the dog, But
yeah, well, I mean, I generally like dogs more than people, so I don't mind.
Sure,
I don't think I'm just like the average dog is probably nicer than the average person. I hate to say that, and also just because, and as I've pointed this out before, the innocence of a lot of dogs, it really comes home to me in that Snowtown one. He tells him to kill the dog. The dog has no idea what's happening. The dog looks at him with love and appreciation. He's pointing a gun at the dog's head. The dog doesn't know. The dog loves you and trusts you, and then you just fucking kill it. Like, to me, that's just worse than killing like 10 people in some ways. Maybe not really, but you know what I mean. But And in this, you feel bad because the dog was trying to protect him. The dog knew it wasn't Santa, that it was an intruder, and he had to get him.
Oh yeah, I definitely felt more for the dog than the people in this movie.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it shows his corpse. Like, how did they even do that when he was carrying the dog? Like, that was an awfully good-looking
Yeah.
dead dog he was carrying.
Yeah, his tongue lolling out of his mouth and everything for effect. Yeah. I don't know.
Flapping in the slow mo.
But don't worry.
Very, very well done.
I watched the credits to the end, and the credits say that no animals were harmed.
Oh,
Not that I doubted it. But,
yeah. If it was Japanese, I'd be like, we killed like 6 dogs.
Like, in the name of cinema.
We killed them, and then killed 5 cats.
Yeah. Disney with all their horrible animal treatment in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
When they went over that waterfall, they actually went over that waterfall. So yeah, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Milo notice.
But
which we had a pug at that time, so I was obsessed with Milo Notice.
Yeah, I've never watched it. I've heard all the horror stories about it.
Well, I didn't know all that when I first saw it.
Yeah, see, I didn't know the movie till much later. Yeah, as I've said,
very good.
When we were talking about like Disney Plus and stuff like that, their library, I was saying like I watched like the old animal movies. Benji's always my favorite dog of the screen. I love Benji. I think there's like a brand new Netflix Benji.
I was gonna say it may be like a year old now, but it's actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't bad.
Always loved me some Benji. Even though it's really one of the forgotten ones, it's not For the Love of Benji or Benji. It's Benji the Hunted, where he looks after a family of just the cubs. Cougar, a mother cougar gets like separated from her cubs, and he protects them and looks after them until he reunites them. And it's actually the reunion scene is amazing. It's like he's with the cubs on the edge of this cliff, and she comes, and they have like a big stare down, and she sees her cubs, and it looks like she's going to rip them apart. But then she seems to understand what he's done, and she sort of like nods, and she goes to her cubs, and he just sort of walks away. And you can and I mean, it's great acting by the dog because he looks very sad to leave the cubs. People got to give dog actors some credit sometimes. I mean, yeah, sometimes they're just eating peanut butter. So you think you should recognize that Doghouse show? So that shitty Canadian garbage sitcom that I watched on my TV.
Oh yeah.
Where their Uncle Digby turns into his dog, or well, you know what I mean. He doesn't turn into him. They get their brains switched by lightning, and I love how it's like in the old like the opening, like the whole opening is the explanation of that. It's them singing. It's like Digby was a cop out on the job and sings the song. But I used to watch entire episodes of that. I never thought it was good, but I was a kid and I watched what was on. So it's like, this is what's on. I'll watch the dog show. Even as like a 7, 8, 9-year-old, I was aware of how terrible the writing and acting was. Still watched it. But yeah. So not a great moment in dog cinema history.
The director of the new one is actually the son of the original guy, the guy that did the original films.
Benji?
Uh-huh.
That's kind of cool. I remember I have no idea what it was called, but this is another one of the ones I watched from way back when that was like a 60s movie. It was about a dachshund. It was about a family that just adopted a new dachshund, and they named him Candy. And then they lost him, and I think he gets captured, and he leads this whole thing where he leads like a mass breakout of all these animals at this facility. It's pretty cool, but I don't know what it's called. Saw a movie that was all about a coyote that winds up in Hollywood, like the hills and stuff. And again, I mean a real coyote. I don't mean like Beverly Hills Chihuahua nonsense. I mean, it was about a coyote running around the hills of Hollywood and, getting into shenanigans and stuff. I watched tons of those animal movies. I was used to movies where people were just like there and the only characters were the animals, and the dialogue only came every like 10, 15 minutes. I got very used to those. Nicky
and that showed on Family Channel.
Yeah, Nicky Wolf Dog of the North from I think 1957. God, I love that. About like a northern like half wolf dog that gets separated from her owner in the far north, and she becomes friends with a bear. Oh, it's great. I'd love to see those movies again. So if those are on Disney Plus, I'd love to see them. I know a lot of them are, or at least a lot of things like that are, because I've heard like they're going pretty far back in their catalog to a lot of the more obscure stuff. So that sounds pretty neat. Like I said, I think on Boxing Day I'm going to do it. Boxing Day is one of my favorite days of the year. Hey, Agadaga.
Speaking of dogs,
Really miss having it.
yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw Benji the Hunted in the theater.
Wow, that's awesome. I think
There was a lot of movies like that around that period of time.
I think it must have been shot in British Columbia. It really looks like the British Columbia rainforest.
Like there was a movie just called Bear, I think. It may have just been called Bear. About these two guys, like I think one wants to hunt the bear and the other one wants to like keep the bear from being killed or something like that. But I know if I search bear movie, it's not going to come up.
No, you get too much weirdness.
Yeah, the Bear, 1988.
Huh. Easier than I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, so many of them. A lot of them are from like the 50s and 60s, and I don't remember their titles. But it's funny, you know how I mentioned we talked about the Black Hole. Of course, that was around a Christmas one year. We did the Black Hole, the weird Disney sci-fi movie, and I mentioned that like when I first saw it, it was being aired on Family Channel. They also aired the TV special that they showed back when the movie was coming out, the Major Effects thing. Remember about that guy, the superhero costume? A big segment of that shows a bunch of animal clips. Part of that show is him showing clips of animals doing stuff in Disney movies, like wrecking up a place and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's good stuff. But yeah, if I still have that tape, I don't know. I didn't bring my VCR home. I've got a bunch of tapes here, and I don't think the VCR here works. Because my mother said, yeah, if that works, you can like look through the tapes. I'm thinking that'll take hours and hours and hours. We have a lot of tapes. And as I said, the best ones are mostly ruined.
You need to go through them and like upload all the commercials onto YouTube.
I do.
Yeah.
Because they're fucking amazing. The last time I did this, I told you this before, the last time I really looked at the tapes was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I found one that I didn't even remember. Don't even remember what was on it. I told you. It was like some sort of, I don't know, it was a coffee commercial. And it played like an actual like movie. You had no idea that it was a coffee commercial. It was at least 15 minutes long. I'm not even kidding. And it was a woman. It was a woman moving into an apartment building, and then there's like a cute guy that lives across the hall or downstairs.
Yeah.
And it was to be continued because he was going to come over later. Like
right.
And then at the end, she's like getting coffee ready. It was at least 15 minutes. At no point did you think it was a commercial.
I want to say it was Community Coffee or something, but anyway, whatever company it was. But yeah, it was a big deal. Like they played it out like a soap opera almost. Like
Oh. See, I had no idea. I just stumbled upon it a few years ago that it was on one of our tapes. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I didn't even fast forward. I was so fascinated. I was like, what is going on? And then
I think that long one you're talking about, I think it may have been like paired with the Super Bowl or something somehow. It was like a big deal. I remember that, but
it's interesting.
It's no way they aired a 15-minute long commercial all the time, though. So must have been some like special, circumstances.
That makes sense. Yeah, that did not occur to me at the time. You could have knocked me over with a feather at the end of it when it like revealed like that it was to be continued and it was a commercial for coffee. Like I was flabbergasted. Not that there weren't to be continued commercials, but they were kid ones. Like a lot of the breakfast cereal ones had ongoing storylines. Remember?
Yeah.
Like I remember some to be continued ones with they had a really long ongoing saga with Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Because it used to be Cinnamon Toast Crunch had like 3 chefs, remember?
Yeah.
And they would sing the song. Eventually, at some point, they decided to phase out the 2 tall chefs and just focus on the guy with glasses. And they called him Wendell, I remember this, and they made him insane. And suddenly he was just insane, and like Cinnamon Toast Crunch drove him insane or something. I don't know, and his eyes would bulge out. And I was like, what is going on? I can remember To Be Continued for Honeycomb, which was always about like a group of adventuring kids.
Yeah.
At least a couple others that had like a To Be Continued going on. I'm just thinking like all these serials still exist, but these kids aren't getting the full experience because they're not seeing commercials for them.
No.
not the commercials we saw.
It was
with like full
I went to the store saying I want this. Like it made me want to buy a cereal.
Yeah.
It really did.
Like our cereals came with like fully animated realized worlds around them. They weren't just a cereal. They existed in a universe that we saw. And yeah, we knew it was a commercial and it was cheesy, but it's still something in it appealed to us. Maybe not all of them. Some of them still annoyed me even as a kid. But yeah, I remember so many of them. The only one that still seems to show up a cartoon now is like Toucan Sam, maybe.
Yeah, maybe the Cocoa Puffs bird.
I haven't seen that in many, many years. So
Maybe they don't do that anymore. I don't know. He's still in the box.
Yeah, that's what I mean. All these cereals still exist, and they keep a lot of the mascots. Honey Nut Cheerios with the honeybee.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my favorite cereals too. I should get that again. I haven't had that in so long. I could eat bowls of that.
Yeah.
I was a lucky kid too, in that like my parents never told me I couldn't have a cereal. I got whatever cereal I wanted, and that was back when I actually used to eat breakfast. I haven't eaten breakfast since I was a teenager, but when I was a kid, I always used to eat about 3 or 4 bowls of cereal.
Yeah.
I could really fill up on the stuff. But I've just never been a breakfast food person. Like people talk about, like, I don't know, eggs and bacon and stuff. Like none of that appeals to me.
Mm-hmm.
But cereal is always good.
Yeah, my personal favorite, probably just go with the old school Frosted Flakes.
I like those too. I never had a favorite. What I did was I would get in a mode and I would eat one in like crazy for like 3 months. Then I get sick of it and get another one. And
Yeah.
this would rotate over a few years. I remember, like, speaking of something like Frosted Flakes, when they had the first, like, what were they? The Cheerios that had the frosting on them, or they just called Frosted Cheerios. Like, I was insane for those. But I mean, I ate some weird ones too, like, and of course I liked the Reese's one.
Mm-hmm.
They were really good, peanut butter puffs or whatever.
They make a lot of weird stuff nowadays. Like everything has got like spin-offs and different variations.
Yeah, I should really get into it again. Eat some interesting cereals. Because lately, I've did, in the last couple of years, I tried to be a bit more healthy. All I eat now is like Special K. I don't like it that much, but I'm just trying to be. But I mean, it won't kill me to have sugary cereal. It's not like I've completely cut sugar out of my diet. So sugary cereal is not going to kill me.
I like Raisin Bran a lot.
Never liked that. Never been a raisin person. The only time I like raisins is the glossettes. The chocolate-covered raisins are okay, but even them, not really a fan of raisins, period. I'm not like Garfield about raisins. That's the one food he hates. But but I've never been a raisin fan. Especially like cookies with raisins. Like oatmeal raisin is like a double whammy. I don't like oatmeal cookies. I don't like raisins. So I don't like either. Just give me classic chocolate chip. Speaking of chocolate chip, Cookie Crisp was only available sporadically. Sometimes it would disappear for months on end. And when I first heard about it, it wasn't available in Canada at all. What's really weird is the first time I ever had Fruit Loops was our second trip to Florida. Eventually Fruit Loops became a staple and they're everywhere. But there was even a time where Fruit Loops weren't available here. And I remember we were staying at the hotel and we came down for breakfast and they were trying to tell us the breakfast options. And of course I was picky. So they said, of course, they had cereals. And they named some cereals for me, and they named Fruit Loops. And I was like, okay, I'll try that. And I remember imagining them in my head much different than they actually were. I imagined them more like rings, and I imagined them more like, even though you never see this in here, more like a primary color. I remembered like a fire engine red, a very dark blue. Like, they were very different, but I did like them. And within, I think, a few months, they showed up in Canada, but they weren't, or at least our part of Canada, but they weren't there.
Huh. Yeah, Fruit Loops are good. Every once in a while.
But I mean, I ran the gamut. Lucky Charms, Count Chocula.
I always go off on this tangent, but General Mills, this is probably about a decade ago, they switched all of their cereals to whole grain.
Oh, all of them? Jesus.
And I think it really affected a lot of the flavors of the cereal.
That would definitely bother me. Because that was probably more General Mills than Post when I think about it. They had more of the marshmallow ones, and I like marshmallows.
Yeah. Fruit Loops is probably one of the only ones that I could still eat, but that Cocoa Puffs, Cookie Crisp, they're not good anymore.
I ate a lot of Lucky Charms when my first 2 years of university when I lived on campus because I famously hated most of the meals, and so but you could have cereal anytime. So a lot of the times I would eat cereal as a replacement for the meal, and like the only good one they had because most of them were healthy garbage was Lucky Charms. So I ate Lucky Charms for like supper like a bunch of times.
That's probably like the worst one for you too.
Oh yeah, but this is with the height of me living like completely unhealthy. My first 2 years, I barely slept. I only pretty much ate like horrible junk. Like I was only like 125 pounds. I don't know how I functioned, but I functioned really well for well into the third year before it all came crashing down. I was even a good student for those first 2 years, getting high marks, but eventually you just can't keep going. And at that time I didn't have rules against anything. Like I was never much of a drinker, but I drank. I did, and I drank coffee too. Like so, yeah. Those were definitely years where, and I drank pop every day, like sometimes 3 times a day. Those were the years that were ruining my teeth. Yeah, so those were hard living years. Even if I wasn't like some people, I didn't drink a lot, but I drank. The only drugs I did were not very harmful, really. But I barely slept, and none of the food I ate was ever healthy, and way too much sugar, way too much caffeine. Yeah.
Yeah, I weighed 170 at one point, like my senior year in high school, which was pretty small for me. But
yeah, you're well over 6 feet.
Yeah, I was like, my diet consisted of like Diet Coke and like cigarettes.
Yeah. The one thing was, except for like a few months, I didn't smoke. And that was my third year. Actually, my third year after my roommate and friend's mother died, I started smoking basically to avoid him, which is pretty shitty.
Wow.
But I knocked it off pretty quickly. I only did it for 3 or 4 months.
A terrible habit.
Yeah.
I smoked for nearly a decade.
And expensive. God, it's expensive. At least in Nova. That's why I know the Nova Scotia smokers are hardcore because they'll pay anything. You could make it $25 a pack, and they'd complain, but they'd still line up.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it's more of a, I hate to say this, but like a lower class type thing.
I guess. Yeah, I guess it kind of has shifted that way just because health has become such a big thing, right? Health has almost become sort of a trendy thing. So I can see that, right? Now it's like on the lower end. I don't know. We don't have time to get into it, but I mean, I realize that vaping is good if you were a smoker. It's a good step down. Yeah. But people that just like started vaping, like especially all these kids, right? Like you're idiots.
They've got a big program going here in the States about, how vaping is so bad and everything else. And it is, but like they're predicting a return of cigarettes, like a huge, because of the big vape campaign. But like vaping is so much better than smoking cigarettes because it's a tobacco with the carcinogens in it. Like the vape is just water vapor with nicotine in it. Yeah. It's not really that harmful.
And it is a lot better to be around. Like I always find myself walking behind guys vaping, and maybe they're annoying, but at least their cloud or whatever has like some sort of pleasant smell to it. It's not terrible. It's not like being around smokers. Yeah. But yeah, just the problem is how young some of these vape. They weren't even smokers. These are just kids saying vaping's cool and I'm going to vape now. And like, don't do that. Dumb. But anyway, we'll get into it. But we'll circle back to the end here. I'll just get back to some Christmas stuff just to say what I hope to watch this year. The movie I haven't watched in several years because, ironically, it used to always be on TV when I was young, and I know it because it's Canadian content. It's not a Canadian movie. It's a Disney movie. It's the forgotten one I always talk about, One Magic Christmas, with Harry Dean Stanton as the angel. But that never comes on TV anymore, so I don't know if I'll be able to find it or what. But I would love to see it because I haven't seen it in a few years. I actually own the DVD, but as I said, watching Christmas movies on DVD doesn't feel organic. I've already watched parts of Vacation because I couldn't avoid it. But the big ones for me are like Christmas Story, which I've already watched, but not officially because I want to see with the tree. Christmas Story, Vacation, the 1952 Christmas Carol, sometimes called Scrooge, the one with Alistair Sim. He is the best Scrooge, and there have been many, but he's the best. I never managed to watch It's a Wonderful Life all the way through because it takes so long on television, because it's already super long and then with commercials. But I always at least watch parts of it on Christmas Eve, although I'm usually out for most of Christmas Eve. Because generally, it's shorter than it used to be when I was a kid, but we still do the thing. I go to church with my mother, and then it used to be we used to go all the way out to Glace Bay, where my father's father lived, and visit him, but he passed away a few years. He was my last living grandparent. So now we just go straight to my mother's. Well, it used to be my mother's sister's, and it's funny. My mother's sister moved out of that house around this time that one of her sons, the cousin I have who was the chiropractor, he lived in Halifax for a while. He's got 3 kids and stuff, but they moved back a few years ago. They moved back to Sydney, and they moved into her old house. So now we still go to the house, but it's not her house anymore. It's their house, but she's still there. She lives in an apartment just a few blocks away. So that's where we spend the evening, and then we come back here and people go to bed. Although I stay.
That's cool.
And it's all right. Yeah, it's all right. I don't even mind going to church. It's boring, but it's pretty much once a year now. It's not like when I was a kid. And my mom told me the best news possible about this year's service: no communion. Communion.
Really? Why?
I don't know why. They're doing 2 services tonight, or Christmas Eve, and for some reason the later one, which is the one we're going to, isn't going to do the communion. I don't know why, but it's great because I hate communion because it slows everything down.
Yeah, I guess maybe to speed it up.
It's just 15 minutes of passing stuff around. And I always say, why don't they pass them around at the same time? That's just not how they do it. They do the bread first, then they do the juice or wine or whatever it is. Like, they don't do it together.
The part I hate the most is the peace. You guys do the peace be with you, and you shake everyone's hand around you.
Oh, sometimes. It depends upon the minister. It depends upon the minister. I'm just
such an agoraphobe that I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah. It's always funny because, like, it's not my same church anymore, but the people from it have migrated to this church, and it's the same as when I was a kid. My mother points out all these people, and they all know who I am, but I don't know who they are. And my mom always gets really annoyed that I don't know. I'm like, what? I see them maybe once a year. I don't know how I'm supposed to keep track of all these people. And yes, I know they know who I am. They know you. They know I'm your son. And you talk about me, but I don't know them. And I certainly don't know them by sight. But she always gets annoyed. She's like, he's known you since you were a kid. I'm like, define known. Like, he saw me in church. Didn't know me.
So she seems like a really outgoing type person.
It's
like real,
in a way,
like personal.
It's not that she's outgoing. It's just that she was always super involved. So it just by default wound up. It's not like she's antisocial. So it's not exactly outgoing, but just by default always knew all these people. Because I mean, my mother's in her late 60s now, but going back to even her like early 40s, my mother was like for years like the youngest elder at my church. So like it's funny, like even she's all these years older now, but it's the same thing as like 20 years ago. 20 years ago, she was still hanging out with all these old people doing stuff at the church.
Right.
But now she's one of the old people too, but there's pretty much nobody younger than her either. Like no younger generation has stepped up for this kind of stuff. But as I said, in the last like 2 years, she's less involved with that now. Because so many of these years, she was one of the ones that had to do the stuff for the communion. She'd have to carry one of the plates, which she never liked doing. But I don't know. She's just been super involved, so she knows a lot of people. She loves the community kitchen, and she's always blabbing to me about this Chinese couple that she adores so much. She wants to basically adopt the Chinese couple. It is pretty nice to know, though, this community kitchen, which is, giving out meals to people and stuff, is like so many of them are like immigrants that are newly here. The first thing they think to do is help out, which is awfully nice. It's a really nice thing to do. They don't even speak English that well, some of them, and yet they're still trying to help the community out, which is a really nice thing. So I don't know, maybe I'll meet one or two of them during this. There's a younger Chinese woman that she always makes sound very dateable or something, but I'm just like, not if she lives in Sydney. But anyway,
she has a great personality.
Right, yeah, I know. But they're all, of course, she had to blab to them ages ago, that I had dated a Chinese girl for a few years.
Oh, God.
So, they know all this stuff. At one point, there was one who's like an older one that they know that's coming over that needs to get married off. And they're like, you could marry him. Like, no. Oh my God. But I suppose she's outgoing and personable in those environments. But actually, just because of, I guess, my father's work, he's the one that knows everybody. I can't go anywhere with my father without people recognizing him. Even in Toronto, I went to a trip when I was 14. He and I, it's the only trip I ever went with him, just him. We went to Toronto. It's a birthday present to see the Leafs, and he still ran into people he knew.
Wow.
Tonight,
world, man.
Tonight I had to go back to Best Buy because there was a problem with a gift card I bought. And while I was there, I didn't notice, but somebody had waved to my father. And then he left. And my dad said, "Guy waved to me. I don't think he knows that there's a warrant out for his son."
Oh shit.
This is stuff my dad knows, right? He knows all the criminals and stuff like that. But yeah, so my dad's the complete opposite of me in that, like, everybody has their anxiety and stuff, but even before I had anxiety, like, I was never good at talking to people or stuff. My dad, talking to people's the easiest thing in the world. I think I told you his great accomplishment in that, although he was really good at faking stuff too, but his great accomplishment was sometime in the late 70s, he went on a trip with a couple friends to see the World Cup, not the World Cup, the Grey Cup, the football final. And he like bluffed his way into the dressing room pretending to be a reporter or something just to meet some of the guys. So yeah,
wow.
My dad was just always super comfortable talking to people, and he's also one of those, unlike me. I'm not saying he likes it or anything, but he's very comfortable with like complaining or something. Like, I'm so non-confrontational, but my dad will speak up about things and solve problems, which I've never been at any point in my life.
Yeah.
So I'd say he's maybe the more outgoing one, because he's the one everybody seems to know, even though he's not really social in his older age. There's a club he goes to. It's called a club. It's just this little hole in the wall bar that he goes to and hangs out in. There's some regulars there that he hangs out with. And he told my mother years ago the reason he goes there is because so many people know. He says, I can't go to like a public bar. This private club is good because whenever I go to a public bar, I always meet guys I represented and stuff, and they want to talk to me and buy me a beer, and I don't want to deal with them. So a lot of stuff comes with being a lawyer.
I'm sure he doesn't want to associate with a lot of those people.
Yeah.
Like, on his off time.
As I said, it was a part of my childhood back when, the last 15 years he's done legal aid for the government. If he had his own firm for most of my life, and in my childhood, a big part of that was like idiots calling my house at all hours, saying they got arrested or whatever. That was just normal part of the day for me, is answering the phone and somebody asking for my dad, because and they're aware they're speaking to a child, right? He's not here right now. Oh, well, you tell Mike, I'm at the lockup again, and they don't care at all that they're telling me this. Anyway, what was I saying else? Just a couple more Christmas things. Peanuts has been on a couple times. Hopefully I'll catch it next time because we're close enough now. I was like, to me, Charlie Brown's Christmas is the best there will ever be. It just nails everything. And it would totally satisfy if you're a religious person, because it addresses that part of Christmas. It goes right for the heart of it and talks about it, which maybe they can't do on TV anymore. I don't know. Or maybe they're not supposed to. I'm not one of those people that complains. Me, I don't like religious stuff thrown in, but I admit that's what Christmas is, so I just will address it. Yeah, other stuff will occur to me, but I guess those are the big ones for me that I always try to get to. And once we get past Christmas, I just watch anything that happens to be on, because usually I have a bunch of free time. It's so busy before Christmas, and then the few days. I love, Christmas to like New Year's is like dead time for me. It's been quite a few years since I had to work during that period or worry about like an exam or anything. So the last few years, like that's just goof off time for me. That's time for me to watch what's on TV or play the video games I got for Christmas and stuff. And of course, watch the World Junior Hockey. So it's good times.
Yeah, that is a fun time.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess we can wrap up. So, as I said, I hope you guys enjoyed us finally doing sort of a Christmassy episode, and we tried to cover other Christmassy things. But this is a pretty cool movie, and if you have Shudder, I would suggest watching it, because it's a cool experience, and it's just so different. It has all the stuff in common with Home Alone, but it's actually played completely straight, and it's actually quite dark, and parts of it are distressing. But it makes some good social commentary about like being obsessed with like the action movies of the 80s. And of course, the stuff about his mom being perhaps kind of a greedy 80s businesswoman. I don't know, stuff like that. And the whole loss of innocence is really played up. Yeah, Kevin has to learn some lessons at Home Alone, but not like this kid does. This is pretty cool. And of course, I'll watch Home Alone sooner or later. I never have to worry about that. That's always fun. So I'll watch that sooner or later.
Yeah, I was actually expecting more of a like cheesy, similar to what it was parroting, the action movies of the 80s, 90s. But we really got a like pretty serious tone movie here.
Yeah.
That, really hit some tough notes there at certain parts.
Yeah. It's definitely a unique experience, and that's what I like about it. And it's a pretty ballsy movie to make.
Yeah.
And you can understand, like, I have no idea if the makers of Home Alone knew about this movie, but you can understand them taking that and turning it and giving it a kid-friendly twist. Because it does work. I'm not saying, like, this is the period of Home Alone, Home Alone's a joke. No, Home Alone's good for what it does. It's a good idea. I'm not going to say hold Home Alone up as this amazing movie, but, I mean, most people like it and enjoy things about it, and I certainly do. Yeah. It's good for once a year. I'm one of those people that doesn't watch Christmas movies out of season, so... Plus, it lines up with my own childhood. I'm roughly the same age as Macaulay Culkin. He's only He's like 1 or 2 years older than me, or something. So, I was part of the demographic. I'm part of the demographic of those kids that, like, you'll watch the movie. It's like, that's like relatable. It's
right.
I always talk about movies that are appealing to kids because the kid gets to turn the tables on the adults. Well, that's sort of the ultimate example. So certainly that appealed to me, right? To think, yeah, I could fight off robbers. Well, you could if they were those two. Because they're fucking idiots. That's the point.
And yeah, John Hughes definitely ripped this movie off.
Yeah, I think so. But he made it still his own with his John Hughes ways. It's funny.
Right.
John Hughes, like everything for John Hughes is like about Chicago and like the upper class.
Yeah.
Because it's funny now, and I'm not one of those people that's like cares. You know, we talk about how movies have aged poorly. I don't think Vacation's aged poorly. But if I'm gonna really be a bitch about it and talk about it aging poorly, the one thing you could point out is like in today's economy, it's kind of hard to feel for Clark Griswold, who makes quite a bit of money to live in a very large house in suburban Chicago, and his wife doesn't even have to work.
Oh.
And we're supposed to feel bad that he's not getting the bonus to get his pool played.
He's not getting his swimming pool. Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, I don't even know this because I don't usually live in that world. But one thing I know, because other people have told me, is like Christmas bonuses almost never happen anymore. That's like not even a thing most places. Like that's like a thing of the past that's gone. Like very few places still actually give a Christmas bonus. So yeah. So you could.
Well, his point is that that's included in his salary. So, you know, I was counting on that money, you know, but I didn't get it. So, you know, I mean, I get his point. I don't exactly feel sorry for him necessarily. I just like to see his downward spiral.
For sure. It's great.
From, you know, when you get there.
As I said, it's put me sort of in it's because I've been watching a lot of Community lately too. I'd like to revisit some Chevy Chase at the height. I'm going to watch Fletch again because I haven't seen that in a million years.
Watch Funny Farm.
Oh, okay. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's good.
Because the one thing about Chevy Chase in Community, like, he's good, but the whole point is he's working against his normal type. Because Pierce in that, the whole point is he's often oblivious and he's often the butt of jokes. Whereas Chevy Chase, what he's known for is like making the smart cutting comment and being like, you know, ahead of the other people and stuff. And I like seeing him do that. It's cool. So, and Fletch is just him lying to everybody, which is hilarious. Yeah. It's called Chevy Chase commits fraud for an hour and a half.
He's like a rich asshole in Community, which is kind of like who he is in real life.
Yeah.
He's kind of like playing himself for a lot of that.
Yeah, and it got so real that, of course, he had to leave and badmouth everybody else on the way out, true to form. And it's sad. I mean, I don't care that much because I don't think, like, sometimes you find out like celebrities are really, you know, awful people. I don't think he's a bad person. He's just a jerk. Is kind of how it is, and like that's not new. Going back way to the height of his fame, he was always like that. He was difficult to work with. He could insult and offend people around him and annoy them. He was a master put-down artist. And sometimes I think it was just because he got caught up and he didn't know how to turn it off is the kind of, I think. Because on screen, he's rewarded for it. But then off camera, he kind of keeps it going and upsets people. I think he was one of those people that doesn't really know how to turn it off is really what it is. So I don't really think he's an asshole. I just think he's got some dickish tendencies. I don't know. I know he's...
You know, drug and alcohol abuse, you know, paired with a huge ego and him being a superstar, you know, probably made him an asshole a lot of the time.
For sure. And I mean, if you want to talk about it again, and if you really don't like him, you can say, well, he got what was coming to him because he fell into obscurity in the 90s. Nothing he did in the 90s worked. His talk show failed. Movies weren't any good. He was not really in very many movies anyway. What's funny is Dirty Work, which he's in. To me, that's because there's a gap there. Dirty Work is the last time you see sort of the old Chevy Chase. Then he reappears in Community, and he's old, and he's almost like a different person. It's weird. But
who does he play in Dirty Work?
He plays the doctor that's going to do Pops' operation. The whole thing is right. They need $50,000 to do it, and the reason is because the doctor is a gambler, and he keeps gambling, and the bookies keep threatening to kill him, and they keep breaking his legs and stuff. That movie's 98, and that's like the last time I've seen like the old classic Chevy Chase. And he didn't seem to be around for a few years. For me, he popped up again in Community, and suddenly he's an old man. It's like he aged really quickly in a few short years. But it wasn't a few short years. It was just he was gone for actually longer than you think. Vegas Vacation was 97.
That's what I was about to look up, yeah. That's the main thing I remember him from, the last thing.
Yeah.
Which, that's not a bad film either, I don't think.
It's not bad. I think European is the bad one.
I like European, but not as much as the other ones.
I'd go Christmas, original, Vegas, European. Or the ones with Clark Griswold. Never. I don't.
I'd probably put the original last for me.
No, nothing about the European works for me. I feel like they're just trying to hit the same notes they got in the first one, but not doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of in a Chevy Chase mode. So yeah, what was it? Funny Farm?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look for that. But yeah, I'd like to see Fletch and Fletch Lives. I've seen both of them probably in their entirety, but it's been so long that they sort of blend together in my brain. I can't remember which one is which.
I don't know that I've seen Fletch Lives.
It's just him doing the same stuff, but
yeah,
probably not as good. But still, I kind of like the character. But all right.
Cool. That's our Chevy Chase retrospective.
All Chevy Chase all the time. Part 2 next week. More Chevy Chase. We've only scratched the surface of his brilliance. But yeah, so that was us deciding kind of at the last minute that we would do a Christmas episode because we've never done one before. And this seemed like sort of a unique opportunity because it's kind of a unique movie and a cool thing and something we thought we could recommend to you if you haven't seen it or haven't heard of it, because it has some very cool. Man, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but some unique things to it. I like the stuff about Minitel and stuff like that too, and cool performance by the kid. The bad guy didn't have to do too much, but I mean, he's good enough. And when he gets all the white on him, he looks so weird. I like it. He's very sinister looking. He definitely doesn't look like Santa Claus. He looks like something else entirely, but it still works. And you can understand why the kid would believe it's Santa Claus because, well, he's never seen the real Santa Claus. He's only seen approximations. So maybe this guy doesn't look exactly like it, but shit, there he is in his house. It must be Santa Claus. And that's really what keeps the movie going too. It's like the whole time he thinks it's the real Santa who's after him. And like just how psychologically damaging that must be and how just awful and disturbing it must be for him.
With all the snow on him, he really does look more like Santa Claus.
Yeah. And by the end, he's all full of stuff and he looks absolutely crazy, which he is. He's just, and I like how he's just this deranged lunatic that we don't get a backstory for or anything.
I know. Yeah.
And like you said, to a certain point, he seemed okay. It's almost like what the girl did made him snap. Like maybe he wasn't crazy before that. Like maybe when
she hadn't said that, it would have been fine.
Yeah, in the opening scene when he's throwing the snowballs around, maybe he didn't have any evil intentions. He just wanted to like play with snow.
Wanted to have fun. Yeah, kind of odd the way they played that scene, but
yeah.
I mean, I kind of like that they don't really give him a lot of a backstory because that's like the the American films I'm used to. They give a huge backstory. They show the guy in prison or something, and getting out. They've got to tell you this guy's a bad guy. You know,
if this film was a success, they'd have to do a prequel to explain how he got to this point. For God's sake, I'd be more interested in a prequel about the kid's dad. Like his dad seemed to like be rich too. Like I don't think it's just his mom's money. I think his dad must have left money. I mean, she's the manager of a store, but in a big department store. But they're so rich. I think their dad must have come from a rich family or something. I don't know. And like his dad seemed to have the same. It was the one who bought all the crazy expensive toys. Like his dad seemed to like be some sort of like kid at heart who's really eccentric or something. So I'm not saying the movie should have told me more, but I'm just saying if I had to pick a character to know more about, it would be the father. Because but as I've said, very unique movie and definitely worth a watch. It's a pretty short movie, just about an hour and a half, so easy enough to knock off. And as we said, it was a good opportunity. It's on Shudder now for people that have that. You might be able to find it other places. I have no idea if it ever got a proper release. In the mid 2000s, when I saw it, it was a bootleg DVD. I don't know how my friend got it.
It has so many different titles. I wasn't able to find a DVD release.
Yeah,
but it very well may have been released under some other title.
You think like right after Home Alone became a big hit that this movie would be revisited right away, but it's not the case. I didn't even hear about it for many years.
Yeah, I could see this becoming a seasonal thing for people every year.
Yeah, as I said, it's a neat thing that bridges the gap between like Die Hard and Home Alone in a way, and it's interesting that it came out in the year between those two films.
That would be a good movie marathon.
Yeah, that's true. Just watch those 3 in a row. The tone would be all over the place.
Yeah,
but you still have like fighting bad guys on Christmas. You'd have that going, and for 2 of them, the home invasion.
Finish with Home Alone and sleep soundly.
Yeah.
Instead of with.
And as I said, I hope to watch
thrown off
Gremlins
my
in the next
ponytail.
days. I was really hoping for
Do
some
it.
snow here where I watch Gremlins, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Too bad. And probably the newest movie that's become somewhat of a Christmas classic for me is Krampus from 2015. I really like Krampus. I mean, it's not great, but it's good.
I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
Watch. It's just called Christmas Horror Story. That's a really good film.
Okay. Is that newish?
It's yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah, look it up. It seems like it would be really cheesy and stupid, but it's not. It's actually pretty good.
And I guess that's been my problem with a lot of the other Christmas horrors is like I can't enjoy it, even though I know they're not being serious. They're being silly, so I shouldn't judge them seriously. Like just like Christmas Evil and stuff like that, I just can't really get into them. Silent Night, Deadly Night, Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. They're not really for me.
I think I watched all of those last year, or the year before, and I really don't like any of the Silent Night, Deadly Night. I really don't.
No, it's never appealed to me. And I mean, again, they're not ones I saw when I was younger. I only saw them as adults. So maybe if I'd seen them when I was younger, I would have liked them more. Because that's how it works with some of these movies, right? You remember them from when you were younger. But I didn't have that. That wasn't the situation for me with those movies. I approached them as an adult and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so there's a new Black Christmas in theaters now. But all accounts are it's terrible. So I can believe it.
Yeah. It's
It really bothers me. I don't own the original Black Christmas yet, considering it's one of my absolute favorite movies. I really got to buy it. I really love that movie.
I remember I heard a bunch of stuff about the Blu-ray release that I'm sure that they fixed it, but it had problems at the beginning.
Yeah, was there something about like the colors or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Something about the scan.
So
there's something about the scan, like I think washing out some of the colors or something. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
It's not a particularly colorful movie, but maybe I would notice. But I remember a couple years ago on the Sausage Factory, we were gonna maybe we did do a live commentary, and I wound up having to miss it. But I was all set to I was gonna buy it, and I don't remember what happened because I didn't buy it or do the show, and I don't remember why. Something
we may not have
came up.
done the show,
or maybe we didn't do the show. I don't know. Seems kind of weird that we wouldn't have, considering such a prominent movie, even outside the Christmas season, like just outside of Christmas. That's one of my favorite slashers. I just adore that movie. I never shut up about how much I like it. But anyway, I'll shut up now. And so, thanks a lot. And after Christmas, we will try to get something else up because hopefully we won't be too distracted by all the shiny gifts and things going on. Like I said, after Christmas, I usually have quite a bit of time to myself. It'll be easier. I know tonight we had a late night. I had to run out and do some stuff. And, like people do at this time of year, you do stuff. I can't complain. I'm fairly busy, but I'm not nearly as busy as some people. And I know, you've had stuff to do with like kids and stuff that I'm sure is time consuming. Not that you dislike it, but it takes up time is all I mean when you're trying to.
Yeah.
So it's hard to fit stuff like this in, but we will try, like I said, to get another show up here and return to our regular stuff. But as I said, it wasn't our intent to do a French movie again so soon, but this movie just happened to be French, so there you go. But yeah, little pre-Christmas treat there. So Joyeux Noel, Merry Christmas, and if you don't celebrate it, Happy Holidays, I suppose, because usually if you live in at least North America, it's a holiday atmosphere regardless of where you are. Right. And you can't get away from it, so just try your best to enjoy it, even if you totally ignore it. As I said, I haven't been religious in years, but I still celebrate Christmas because why not? Because I believe in at least the universal things about Christmas, about peace on earth and goodwill toward men and kindness and charity and all that. That's all good stuff. And certainly it has gotten over commercialized, and God knows we're spending way too much money on it, but I'm not going to be like, I'm going to boycott it, because what the hell is that going to do? And I can't complain too much again, because I'm actually at a point right now where I'm buying less gifts for people than I did 10 years ago. This is like the shortest my gift list has ever been, I think, in my life. Even when I was a kid, I had more people to buy for than I do now. Now that some of that is because people have died, but it isn't all because of that. But anyway, so I mean, I never at any given point have that much money, but I can't complain that I have less money now because of Christmas. Also, because I said, as somebody who's late 30s, I get way too much stuff. Like, it's kind of embarrassing. I get more than I should as somebody my age. So I'm definitely not going to complain about having to spend money on gifts or decorations or whatever else comes up. I've got a pretty sweet deal here, so the last thing I should do is complain.
Cool. Well, yeah, you guys have a good one, and yeah, we'll be back after the holidays with some new shows.
Something fresh. All right. See you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Joyeux Noël.